Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another Sunday night live stream. You're joining me tonight as I'm going to be doing some painting of Raptors. But hello to everyone. Hope you're having a great Sunday. We've got a few people on the stream already. Hello to everyone. Hello to everyone in the chat already. Yeah, we're just going to have a nice kind of chilled out painting session tonight. It's the first time I've done painting on the stream. It's a new block of streaming at least. So yeah, how's everyone going? How's everyone going? How's everyone doing today? We've got Yankees in the chat moderating as ever. Thank you very much. Yeah, so if you've seen my post over on YouTube community, I think I did a Twitch one as well, Twitter one, sorry. I'm going to be painting up some of the Aggressors that we kit bashed a little while ago. Was it last Sunday that we did these? Yeah. So I've basically continued all three. We did manage to do like 1.5. So I continued all three of them. And that was the sergeant that I built off stream. And then I basically just kind of got the base colours down with an airbrush. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So yeah, I hope everyone has had a very productive weekend, hobby weekend. Well, anything really. I hope, what's everyone been working on recently? Personally for me, I've been trying to work on a video, but the video is taking a little bit longer than I hoped it to. But yeah, it's not really taking. It's not been as quick as I thought it would be. So it's a little bit more of a larger project. So whilst I was hoping to have a video out today, it's going to be pushed back to next week. But yeah, is the very quiet. Why is it so quiet? Let me just double check. Modify my microphone position. Is that better? The levels on my side are all okay, so I had a bit of trouble with the stream. It kind of dropped out earlier on, so just let me know if it's any better with the microphone a bit higher up. Cool, thank you. Cool. Where have we got? Painting the Grey Rainbow. Just want to say thank you for getting me into kit bashing. I am now the proud owner of 1.5 kit bashed armies, and my store's consultant for projects. Nice. I don't even think I've got that many armies kit bashed. I think I have one kit bashed army for my Sylvaneth. That's about it. Alan Ray Nerdby. Please don't ever change your approach to your work, Pete. It's so great to have a chilled, positive hobby content. I just do what I enjoy doing myself, really. I'm not the kind of person who's like really like super energetic and doing everything all the time. So yeah, just nice and chilled, nice and laid back on a Sunday afternoon/evening. Voidkinesis painting my repulsor executioner. Nice. That would work actually really nicely for a Raptors project as well. But it's a pain in the arse to build that model. It's all those little repulsor plates. Battle Brother Rabbi. Should start making my army, but I'm having fun making lore for my homebrew. Thanking the inventor of contrast paints I churn through Imperial Guard. Yeah, I know. Any kind of project you end up with like lots of stuff to do on there, having just anything that helps speed up that process is a godsend, honestly. Yeah, thank you for everyone for joining the chat a little bit, well, the stream a little bit early. It will be resuming normal 7 o'clock start schedule from Wednesday next Sunday, but just this evening just needed to be a little bit earlier. But yeah, thank you for everyone for joining. There will be a little bit of overlap with the original time. I'll be streaming till about 8 p.m. So next 3 hours. What else have we got? I have Sisters of Sign Kit Bash with Nighthaunt, and now Aldar and Ideneth Deacon. Nice, lots of stuff to keep you going there. Paint the Grey Rainbow. Yeah, definitely keep it all going. Keep that rainbow painted. Carrick, love your videos, but they might bankrupt me. Yeah, that's one of the things that when someone says, oh, I've never kit bashed before, after watching your videos, I now want to kit bash. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. I do apologise because you're going to spend a lot of money on kit bashing now. New video equals me wanting to start a new army 9 times out of 10. Silvernail, I've started rebuilding my Executioner's 5th company since they are all AO BR shorties. I'm not sure what that acronym is for. Yeah, so we've got a very quick. the stream messed up, and normally there wouldn't be one running. Normally I kind of try to run one during the countdown, so there's going to be one running. I can't snooze them too often because it kind of messes up later on. So whilst you're still in the chat, feel free to leave any questions. Tell me what you're working on, what you've been working on, and then what I'll do is I'll take the time whilst you guys are in the ad to just get our painting set up, and we can get started pretty much straight away. So yeah, I'll just try and run that ad straight away. Hopefully we can get it done out of the way. Cool. Firian, thank you for the follow. Much appreciated. Okay. Right, so if you're still with me, then you are probably a subscriber. So thank you very much for subscribing. You went a little tiny little bit behind the scenes, I suppose, extra little bit. I don't know, maybe if you've just joined the stream and you've had a pre-roll ad or something, then you maybe get a little bit more. You don't have to view the ads as quickly. So I've got my wet palette here. That's what I'm going to be starting off with. Let's grab a few paints to start the process with. Perfect. So yeah, you can see that I've already started to airbrush. I'll go over this again in a second when everyone's back. But yeah, you can see I've already done a little bit of airbrushing just to get the base colours down. I'm just going to be hopefully building up on the armour today. Try to keep the skin quite nice and straightforward, hopefully. So yeah, fingers crossed. Right, let's grab some contrast paint. Try to stay as organised as possible during these live streams, but I try to always avoid getting up as much as possible as well, just so I have like this mega desk of paints and paintbrushes and water and paint palettes and everything else just surrounding me at the moment, just in case I can grab anything I might need at any given moment. Cool, thank you. Everyone's back from the ad. Welcome. I've just been getting a few things ready. I've got my wet palette here, nice clean sheet in there to work with. That's all done. Right, so let's go over what I've done already. Hopefully, there's trouble with the microphone being here. Let me angle it a bit. There. The camera likes to focus on the microphone rather than my face, so I don't blame it, to be honest. Oh, we had a few comments whilst we were on the ad break. Question for anyone that kit bashed the Abaddon model: would a normal Terminator arms weapon look small on him? I haven't kit bashed him, but with experience with the model and seeing other people's conversion, it's going to be probably a little bit too small. Regular Terminator arms. A lot of people use him as a stand-in for I forget his name. The Cockharridan special character who's got like extra large armor, and also people use him as like basis for Chaos Primarch. So yeah, he's going to be a little bit too big. Tire brush the Red Wake. That's it. Thank you very much. I find it difficult to make a Raptors captain that somehow stands out among the others whilst also being sneaky. Yeah, it's kind of difficult, that is, because with my kind of design ethos when I'm looking at Raptors is to try and remove as much of that ornate design as possible, keep it nice and straightforward, utilitarian as possible. And I suppose the closest was my chaplain, which did stand out, but he was a little bit different than regular rank and file. So it's a case of adding in maybe more equipment or making his equipment a little bit more impressive, or even tactical rocks can help. We've done that one. Been planning on doing a Dark Angels army for Horus Heresy since last year. Finally got started this week. Trench-themed bases and Dreadnought is done. Nice. Dark Angels for Horus Heresy. I really like the colour schemes for them. The green and 40k is a step down in my opinion. Apparently Scots have been Inquisitors before in lore. Votan conversion idea, perhaps. I think someone mentioned that actually, based on Rogue Minis, Louise's video. So it's quite a nice little idea. Venturous 40k, first time chat. Hi Pete, do you have any suggestions for an easy homebrew Space Marine armor scheme? I'm guessing you mean paint scheme. In which case, there isn't too many just regular grey. I mean, anything that you can prime with a colour primer can make it very easy to start off with. But But yeah, if you're talking about colours, then anything. So I mean, if you go for Colour Forge, they have loads of different colours. You want something a little bit different. They have some nice oranges, different blues, even grey. There isn't a default. There isn't many default grey armour schemes in 40k. There's a few, obviously, Cockharden's being one of them, but there's a few of them. Yeah, so anything you can spray prime, I would recommend. Anyway, right, I'll keep dipping back into the chat. Big thank you to everyone who's left comments, queries, everything else. But yeah, let's go. So let's go over what I did first. So this is the base model. This is what I'm starting off with. Now I'm going to compare. I'm going to bring in. So I've actually modified the scheme slightly. It might work well. It might not do. So this is my original color scheme. It was a lot more muted. A lot more kind of. It was very similar, but not quite the same. And the reason for that is this one. I wanted to something which is a little bit more. The trouble with this color scheme. It's nice on the army, but the problem I would face would be. Recreating this scheme across a large force. It's a lot more involved, and the shading is a little bit more involved. So what I thought I'd do is I'd start lighter, and then I could afford to shade back more harshly and still have like a nice green color without it being too dark. So I started off with a red oxide primer. I used Vallejo's red. Sorry, I keep banging the microphone. Use the red primer over the surface of the model, and that kind of acted as the base color. But then what I did is I used some of AK colors. I used some of AK's olive green and kind of sprayed that from above, and then picked out a few patches with gold and olive. So that was the kind of the basis there. I will be following the same kind of concept as this, though. It's going to be very weathered. There's not going to be damage. When it comes to weaponry and equipment, it's all going to be this grey colour with the metallic bits being highlighted with silver, and then everything else just being highlighted with a grey. Very, very simple scheme. Nothing too fancy. Lots of kind of basic colours, which will hopefully recreate it here. So the pouches, again, I actually can't remember what colour pouch did I go for. Yeah, grey. Everything's going to be pretty much grey on this. For the masks, though, I might go something a little bit different. Maybe incorporate something in there which represents the flamer gauntlets that they've got here. But yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be working on those. Also going to be chatting if you have any questions, anything like that. Demo Traz, yes, it was using an airbrush just for speed. You could probably do some dry brushing though. Nice dry brushing. Really squeaky chair tonight. So, first port of call is going to be some armor damage, because that's usually one of the messier steps, and doing that first will mean that if I paint anywhere else and base coat it, not going to have the problem of overspilling. So I'm just going to start off with some of the Two Thin Coats range, Berserker Red, like nice kind of red oxide colour. That's going to give us both a colour that contrasts nicely against the green on the armour because it's got red in it, and it's also going to be a little bit darker and give the effect of rust as well starting to form. Now this is one of those big arguments that happens with Space Marines, and I've had comments on my videos in the past where people have said, well, Space Marine armour doesn't rust because it's ceramite, it's not like an iron base, so it shouldn't be ferrous, but you don't know what kind of coatings these armours got or anything like that. You don't necessarily know what colour it does degrade at. It might react to a certain oxide, certain environments and form like a red oxide. Never know. So yeah, go for it. Whatever chipping colour you want, whatever looks best. I'm not going to change the focus too much, so I'm just going to kind of keep. It's going to be a little bit out of focus for the palette. Maybe I should have another camera for palettes or something. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. And we're just going to pop a little bit down on here, and we're going to be using just the regular foam chipping technique. This is the one problem with these paints. Sometimes if you get a little bit too much paint in the lid, the nozzle likes to come with them. So there we go. Pop a little bit down there. Can you work with that? A little bit of foam here. Regular just kind of blister packing foam. I'm just going to rip that up into some smaller chunks. A nice jagged edge there. So again, this is going to be hopefully being built out into an army. We can maybe just build this up over streams and maybe a little bit of work out off the stream. And the idea is really going to be to get the armor scheme done quite quickly. It's going to be fairly detailed, but not over the top. Maybe not as detailed as my kill team. So yeah, we've got the armor here. Let's start on a smaller area just to make sure that everything is coming off this properly. So yeah, you know what? Actually, looking at this color, I might go a little bit darker. I think this might be a little bit too bright, personally. You see that? A little bit too bright, maybe. It's darkening now. Yeah, it's darkened a little bit now that it's dry. Let's keep on with this anyway. We can always sort it out later. So I'm just going to apply a few of these chips around these edges here just to give that impression that these areas, especially around the legs and around the gauntlets, things like that, that we're going to see more damage than we would do in other areas. And that's just going to help to add to that rough and readiness that these guys have. They're maybe not as pristine, not ornate as maybe Black Templars or Ultramarines or anything like that, but they get the job done. If their armor gets a bit scratched and beat up at the same time, doesn't matter. Now the thing is with this kind of work is it's very easy to go overboard. You don't always need too much chipping. I've seen people who've done so much chipping. There's probably more chips than there is actual like basic paint on there, and it just looks strange. It looks overdone. I mean, stylistically, some people go for it. It can work well if it's done well, but just a few here and there, just dotted about, is usually enough just to get that perception around. Especially if you just pick out those few key areas. So again, gauntlets around the legs, areas where you'd imagine damage to occur naturally. Same kind of principle goes if you're doing tanks, things like that. Areas that are likely to scrape against rubble and walls and buildings, things like that, they're going to be the worn the most, but also areas where the crew works. So as they're getting it out of the tank, as they're loading in ammunition, anything like that. Anything in those kind of details. Right. So yeah, just a nice little bit of extra detail. Let's dip into the chat for a little bit, make sure I'm not missing anything. Where are we going? Void Kinesis. I've also started a homebrew named the Sons of Lu, or Lur, base with greedy gold army painter, dry brush retributor armor, and red contrast on the left arm, shoulder, and right leg. Nice kind of bright color, a little bit like a slight variation on Blood Angels. Lord Inquisitor Ignis, I bring greeting to the mould of plastic and resin, clearly superior to Fabius Bile and Ballastor's Call. Pete the Wargamer, I bid you greetings. My dry brushing is great for all over. Haven't really tried blending yet. Too scared of Zenithal. I would definitely recommend checking out some of our Sopa stuff. Byron is a whiz with dry brushing, so definitely check out some of his stuff. Carrick, would you recommend an airbrush even if it's just for priming and or laying down a base coat? I'm a little nervous about pin washing or oil washing. I started off using my airbrush just for doing those kind of things, just for doing base coats, just for doing priming, and for the most part, that's all I use them for. Maybe a little bit of OSL here and there. I use mine more of like a workhorse and do a lot of the detail with brushes, but other people do other stuff. Demo Traz, I'm just converting my Levy pieces to Leviathan pieces to Deathwatch when I get them. I have too many armies to add another chapter, but I do want to paint a few more from other chapters, so Deathwatch in a nice middle ground. Yes, definitely. You can do a lot of nice conversions with that. Shadowhunter 1717 or 1717, thank you very much for subscribing. Much appreciated. Anyone who does subscribe, you are given my eternal gratitude. There we go. That's your reward. You also get to stay on the chat whilst stay in the little stream whilst I'm doing ads and stuff like that. So, Lord of Tempest. Hey Pete, could we have some kitbash ideas for? Oh no, the hype train's appeared and it's blocked my thing. Dogs are going crazy. They're probably having a play. Could we have some kitbash ideas for the Tower Empire? I feel like they could really work with that tactical aesthetic. Yeah, definitely. They definitely could do. Says yes. Shadowhunter, Carrick subscribed. Thank you very much, both to you, Shadowhunter, and to you, Carrick. Much appreciated. Anyone else who does subscribe? Much appreciated. Right. Okay. Anyway, back to this guy. This is what my endless battle is going to be throughout the stream. I'm going to be doing a little bit of painting and then dipping into the chat and then I'll be like, oh, I should be doing some painting, and then I'll be doing a painting. I'm like, oh no, should we go into the chat? So I've done a little bit too much there. You can see just there. Hopefully I'm not got us out to focus too much. Let's get that. So we're gonna try and lift that up. It's not too bad. We can work around that. That's fine. Yeah, the good thing about doing this way as well is that you can kind of build things up. I've got a little bit too much paint on there. That's why it's doing these larger points. You're better off doing less, and then you can always add more if you feel like it's too much. If it's not enough, if you do too much, it's a lot harder to fix. Much harder to fix these kind of things. It's that whole kind of measure twice, cut once. So the only thing is, I think what's happened is my paint's drying up a little bit fast. I've got a fan on just because it's still quite warm. So it's drying up the paint a little faster than normal, unfortunately. This is the trouble when you're working with suboptimal temperatures. The good thing about using the sponge as well is that it kind of does create more ununiform scratches. If you want to create more uniform scratches, you can just go in with a regular brush. And then we are just going to just thin it out a little bit to paint. There we go. Lord of Tempest, cheer 200 bits. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Hype train started as well. Thank you very much, guys. I do quite like seeing that hype train pop up. I think it gives more emotes or something, or maybe when you get so many bits or subscribers, you get some sort of benefit. So yeah, thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. So yeah, whilst I shouldn't keep licking my brushes. I shouldn't keep licking them. Whilst the sponge is really good for doing those kind of basic, kind of like the overall ones. If you want to apply a few more specific ones, you can just use like a really thin tipped brush, and you can just apply some light scratches across the surface, like so. And then you can also use this to give some of the edges more of that scraped look. The foam has a tendency of applying the paint more on the flat surfaces rather than the actual edges. So sometimes using these brushes is almost like a slight highlight, but using a darker paint, so it actually gives that appearance that paint has chipped away and been removed. Again, areas where you'd expect more damage to occur, the power fists, in particular on these models. Obviously, if you haven't got power fists, even regular hands on regular Space Marines works quite well, because again, those are the hands are going to be using for climbing over things, punching through torsos of enemies, all those things which are going to damage things. Dimo Trash, subscribe to the Prime. Thank you very much. We have achieved level 1 of the hype train. Much appreciated. Toa Dirtman, Pete the Wargamer, love the model. Where are the patches from? So these ones are, I think, so this pouch here is a extra little side pouch that comes from the Heavy Intercessors kit. These two pouches here are from the Mark IV Power Armor kit, I think, if I remember rightly. And these ones are from the Space Marine Tactical Squad, I believe. That's what these ones are for. I have different ones in each one, but yeah, they're all kind of similar kind of pouches. Some of them are from Space Marine, some of them are from Horus Heresy units, some of them Primaris, some of them not. Lots of sources for pouches. Mikey Vengeance, hello sir, big fan of your channel, thank you very much. Welcome to Twitch. It's a little bit more of an interactive experience than my usual videos, where you just leave a comment and hope that I see it and reply. Whereas this is, I do try to respond to as many of the messages and comments that you guys leave. It's a bit more of an interactive experience, especially when we were doing the video on Wednesday because that was obviously a viewer submitted thing, and I could get those videos, get those pictures up, those projects, show you exactly what I meant, and elaborate in a way which I could mean that people could ask questions if I hadn't done things, explain things properly, or if they wanted me to elaborate more on a certain thing. So yeah, it's quite a different experience than doing a video. Also, you get to see all the mistakes that I make and edit out in my regular videos. So yeah, that's always good fun for you. It's embarrassing for me, but I'm sure it's good fun for you guys. Okay. So that's going to be enough, I think. I can always add more if I want to, but again, I don't want to apply too much because it's one of those things where it's very hard to sometimes find that stopping point. So I'm going to stop while I'm ahead, and then if I come back and I want to do more, I can do. All right, so we're just going to do the same against the other three guys. I'm going to do a little bit of batch painting. If I find that I'm not getting much done in the stream, then maybe what we'll do is just focus on one, and I'll do some painting off stream, or we can come back to them. Whatever's preferable. If you guys like to see more progress in a video, then we can do that. If not, if you're just happy to see the process come on across several models, then yeah, we can just batch paint them. The thing is, now I've got to think of things to say that isn't just, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing, because I've already explained it in the last step. That's the only trouble. So who's managed to get a copy of Leviathan this time? I know that they were still on sale for a lot longer. So one of the things which, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see what I mean. So one of the problems which I've been getting recently is that people have essentially been blaming the Games Workshop's inability to get stock levels right and stop scalpers and people who are essentially taking up all the small amount of copies that are available. And they're blaming all of that on content creators because we do get stuff early. We get copies of things early to work on and do articles and painting guides, things like that. So we've got them for head of release. And then some interesting people, think that we're solely to blame for the fact that no one else can get them, which is an unusual stance to take, because first of all, why would Games Workshop bother sending anything out to anyone if that was their entire stock? What's the point in us promoting stuff if there isn't any stock anywhere? And also, I think the amount of stock which is made versus the amount of content creators that there are is like, the scale's way off. It's so off. And I was saying to a lot of people who were like, well, the reason why the stock issues is because Games Workshop has got very limited capacity. If you watch the painting phase, and obviously it's got Peachy there and Pat, who both worked at Games Workshop, so they have that insight into the actual kind of inner workings of Games Workshop. They are pretty much at capacity all the time. They can't make enough models to keep up with demand, which is why you probably won't ever see Games Workshop wanting to reduce their prices, because if you can't make enough models to keep up with demand, then what is the point in reducing? Why would you ever bother reducing the price? Because obviously that would only increase demand and make it harder to do. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange thing. So Games Workshop have probably been having to prioritize exactly what they've been producing for the last however many. I think they've got 2 facilities, so it's reasonable to suspect that one facility or a big chunk of one of those facilities has been purely just churning out Leviathan for the last few months, which is why we've seen problems with any of the other big pre-orders that we've had recently and those going out of stock, because they're not maybe making as much as they want to. I mean, it's pretty poor still. I mean, it's not an excuse. It's a reason, but it's not an excuse, really. But Leviathan seems to have gone. A lot of people who wanted Leviathan seem to have got a copy. A lot of the independents seem to sell out pretty quickly, but then a few of them have got more copies secured. So, yeah. So I just went on a bit of a rant there. Let's see if anyone's blaming content creators is ridiculous. I know. I think some people just see content creators as someone that they can direct their hate and frustration to, whereas at Games Workshop you can drop them a message on an email for customer support, or you can drop a message on Facebook, and it's like it's kind of faceless, but you can kind of target content creators and blame them for those kind of things. I think some people have said, oh, maybe it's just because of the jazz, and that might be the case for some people, which I understand that obviously someone getting something for free, it's probably a little bit of a kick in the teeth when you wanted to pay money for it, but we don't just get given stuff for free for nothing. We do actually have to put some work into them. We have to build the followings and everything like that, which takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money and investment, and keeping up with those releases so that we keep on getting stuff can be tricky sometimes as well. But I'm not going to complain because I get free stuff, so I'm never going to complain about that. Anyway, local gaming store saving one, nice. I am trying to figure out how to make Necron Lords out of sisters and the CCB Lord. See, a lot of people use acronyms. I have no idea what the acronyms are because I just kind of think of everything as full names. CCB Lord. Someone can elaborate there. Rybo007, hi Pete and chat. How's everyone? I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for chatting for the first time today. Toadman, I'm excited for when they release the Melee Dreadnought for itself, so I don't have to buy the box with the Nerf guns. Yeah, so I'm imagining that when we get the inevitable releases of Leviathan, so the Stern Guard, the new Terminators, everything released in multi-part plastic, I imagine that's when we'll probably see those. Maybe sooner, but at a guess, that's what I imagine those would be released in. How's this one looking so far? Cool. I think it's looking okay. I might just do a little bit around the back. It's still a little bit bare around there, so let's leave that for the time being. I'll just pop my lid on for a second. Oops. Right, where were we? I hope Games Workshop one day will consider making made-to-order transfer sheets for 40k. Yeah, I think transfer sheets are one of those things which should be quite easy to do. It's quite easy to print as a separate entity, but often are quite hard to get hold of. I heard that 10th edition was the priority since late last year. That's why lots of the other boxes were out of stock for months straight after launch. Yeah, I imagine that's probably the reason. I think they knew that it would be the case that 10th edition would be big. I mean, where are we on the release cycle? So recently we've seen a new edition every 3 years for 40k and Age of Sigmar. So we have an Age of Sigmar release next year, but Age of Sigmar is popular, but I don't think it's ever as popular. Got a bit of thunder there. Ever as popular as 40k. So I'm, without knowing the numbers, just on kind of rough estimations, they probably sell more Leviathan copies than Dominion. Indomitus copies than they did Dominion. So yeah, that would explain. But then there's also like rumors of Epic and Old World find its way into stores this year. So again, more production. What combo of green do you use for your Raptors? For this one is AK's olive green, get on camera, and then with some gold and olive over the top. I'm going to be doing a little bit more work to it in a second. I'm picking up my first 40k, 30k setup today from my local hobby site. Do any one of you enlighten me on how to start an Elf Legion army? Yeah, I have no idea really. Just paint them either reflective blue or regular blue or anything like that. But yeah. You're essentially part of the marketing team, so you're doing a job for Games Workshop, so of course it's not for nothing. Yeah, I think there are maybe. I mean, for me, I've been part of the creator program for a long time. When it was very, very small amount of people on there, and then they kind of started to roll it out a little bit more in the last few years. They actually started thinking we can use this for a little bit of like marketing essentially. So it works differently now than when I first got in there, and I think the contracts that the new people signing, these NDAs, not really contracts, they're more NDAs, they're different than what I did, so I don't really know what the new rules are, but I mean, mine didn't say I can't criticise them, but some people seem to think that the new ones do, so I don't know. I've seen plenty of people who supposedly signed this new NDA, or if they are on under that new NDA, they've criticised Games Workshop plenty enough. So I don't really know where that kind of idea that every now and again I'll get a comment. It'll be like, oh, I can't trust anything you say because you're not allowed to say anything bad about Games Workshop. I'm going to say bad stuff about Games Workshop all the time. For example, the stock levels are terrible. It's just annoying trying to find anything that's any of the Kill Team stuff was ridiculous. The way that they release stuff in big boxes, like new kits, is annoying. Just release everything in one go. But yeah, anyway. I wonder if Games Workshop will overcorrect for the failure of Dominion. Possibly, yeah, because Dominion was a strange one where it went out of stock, if I remember rightly. I might be confusing this, but I think it went out of stock and then they overproduced it for pre-order, but then they massively overproduced it, so there was Dominion copies flying around for ages. So, yeah, maybe. Leviathan was my first Warhammer purchase in a long time, and I had no issues pre-ordering from a Games Workshop store. Yeah, I think some people were going in there. Hard hitting tips with Pete, just paint them. Yeah, just paint them. Just paint them as Alpha Legion. That's what you got to do. Yeah, I think Alpha Legion, one of those ones, it's lots of different colours. You have that kind of nice turquoisey colour, that matte one, but a lot of people also do that thing where they spray them silver and then go over with like a turquoise contrast paint. But yeah. So yeah, we're currently in an ad break. I didn't realise one was popping up. I probably should have that over here so I can better see what's going on. So yeah, if anyone who's here, thank you. You are part of the special group of subscribers who gets to watch me waffle on whilst the ads are running. So yeah, Shadowhunter 1770, you should be in here already. You're now subscribed. Your builds are the best. It was great to build and paint your original Kill Team members. Yeah, I mean, that kind of Kill Team was great. I did enjoy that one. With it being a Kill Team, I could spend a lot more time on each individual model. Whereas now, if I'm building an army, I need to kind of roll that back. So it won't look as good individually, but hopefully when having a big army, that's where that fun and kind of blending together of stuff will work nicely. Right, ad in progress. It's going to be finished in a little bit. Let's get back to this. I might need a little bit more paint on here. And we're back. We got attacked by ads there a little bit, but let me just put a little bit more paint on my palette so we carry on. I was answering questions. I was responding to comments. Painting question. Do you know a good stone effect for armor? I'm planning my Terminators to look like terracotta golems. So terracotta. So I mean, you're probably going to want to be dry brushing. You can get that kind of stony texture, but what you can do as well, you can do like a stippling technique. Again, anything to do with dry brushing, stippling. Check out Artist Opus. I think he might even have done some stone videos, and you can do things like add in some moss in areas as well to give them that kind of stony effect, as if they've been stationary and dormant for a long time. The moss has formed around them, and then they've started to move. So it's quite a lot of people do it for Necrons. I've seen a lot of Stonecast Eternals. People like to do it for those kind of things. So yeah, dry brushing is probably the way to go. And for that, I'd recommend checking out the Artist Opus channel. Still have 10 boxes of Dominion at my friendly local gaming store. Then again, they still have all the Space Marine Christmas box sets too. That's quite nice, because I actually was thinking that the Salamanders one might be useful for me, but I haven't been able to find it in any of my usual places. So I get a lot of my stuff from Element Games. It's not too far from me, so I can literally go up and pick stuff up from the place myself. So last time I checked, they still had the Raven Guard one, and they also had, what was the other one? Raven Guard and maybe White Scars, I think, with the Outriders. I can't remember, but I think the Salamander. I've already got the Imperial Fist one, which is why I've got so many heavy intercessors and aggressors and things like that. But what was in the Salamanders one? the Malta guys. Geppenzord, late afternoon from Ireland. Hello, welcome to the chat. Got a box reserved for at my local hobby shop. Can't be more excited about the dino bugs. Yeah, it's quite nice to see Tyrannism on these boxes. They always do a good job when they kind of bring in these separate Xenos races rather than just having Chaos and things like that. I love the Infernus Squad for my Raptors. Reminds me of GIs of Flamethrowers World War II. Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to incorporate some Raptors. Some Infernus Squads into these guys. I think that will look quite cool. Which Sisters kits do people think would make the best Lords? Not sure what you mean by that one. You're painting your Torux. Oh, it's a fun vehicle, that one is. I like it when people put like resin wheels on there. I think Games Workshop has released a couple of dud sets lately. Soulforge King being released weeks before the new Terminator reveal. Yeah, I think the trouble is with... I mean, going back to Kill Team, which is... I mean, it's a sore subject for me because obviously this is what these guys were from. But we basically got the... what was it? Prior Nexus, I think it was. Set which released with the heavy incest in there, and they were like, oh yeah, you can use heavy incest in your kill teams now because we've released some rules for them. And it was like straight after that we're like, oh yeah, well we're actually changing all the rules for kill team, so now you can't use those heavy incestors in there in the same way as you could do not that long ago, just like a few months ago. So yeah, games which have a strange habit of doing stuff like that, where they release something with models and then release something that's got the brand new models in there. I'm guessing it's probably maybe some sort of scheduling thing where the people who are working on stuff in the studio, especially for something like Soulforge King, which just had 2 new models in there. So this is the thing, another gripe that I have. It's great having those box sets where you have some extra characters in there, and if you want fancy starting an army, you can split it with a friend, or for me, you can get like really load up your bits box. But if you just want a character from that, and you're expected to buy 2 whole army, well, 2 kind of starting point armies, and a character that you don't always want, it kind of encourages people to buy the box sets who don't necessarily want it. So then they go out and they sell them on, stick them on eBay, stick them on, try to sell them to the friends, things like that. So the people who do want that box actually struggle to get it. But if they just were like, oh, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to sell it with these other models, you're going to get a discount, so it's going to be worth buying it. Or you can just buy them separately. Or even if they said, oh, you can buy them separately next week, then it would mean that a lot of people who wanted those sets could actually get them. I mean, a good indicator of that is the Christmas box sets, because those are usually devoid of any new miniatures. They're always pretty much miniatures which have already been out available for quite a while. And as someone said, and as I've seen, there are still some of those Christmas box sets hanging around, because no one is buying them exclusively for that one model. I mean, I'm sure that the way that they do it makes them a good amount of money, so they're not going to change anytime soon. It's that whole kind of the people who will buy something for that one model and then they're forced to spend a lot more money than they would want to, with the excuse that they're getting good value for money, but they're not really. So this is the third one that we're just doing these scratches on now. You can see it's good to do a mixture of the two, a mixture of these more randomly placed flecks that kind of build up on the surfaces as well, and then you can even then just go over them. So like here, we've got like a nice blank area, so if we just grab a little bit of the sponge, hopefully I'm still on camera at the moment, yeah, I still am. Put a little bit of that down, adds a little bit of texture to the armor, gives it a little bit more realism, and then we can go in and just pick out a few of those edges. And the great thing about this, you don't have to be as neat as you would do with a regular highlight. It kind of works quite well if just keep it nice and rough and ready. Local game store has tons of Aggressors boxes. Yeah, and I think that was an interesting one as well, because it was just one faction, and a lot of people were put off by. So it had the captain in there, which is a nice multi-part plastic captain kit, but most people probably had captains. Are they Desolators? They are, aren't they? A lot of people didn't really like the Desolators. I think the rules were quite good at the end of 9th edition, and they still are in 10th edition as far as I can tell. But a lot of people didn't like the models. I think most people wanted the Dreadnought from that set, if I remember rightly. And then it came with some heavy intercessors, I think, as well, which is by the by. Salamander's boxes, Agatone, 3 Aggressors, 3 Eradicators, Intercessors, and upgrade frames. Yeah, I think that's quite a nice one, actually. Yeah, Aggressors useful, Eradicators definitely useful. Very thematic as well. Sorry, Pete, it's about making interesting Necron Lords out of sister kits and Necron Catacomb Command Barge Lords to make Lords, as we don't have good Lords. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, that might actually be a bit of a gap in the market for kit bashing conversions, because I think, yeah, compared to the leader kits that you get for other factions, they are a little bit lacking. The Imperial factions are great. You get multi-part commanders and stuff. There's the Castellan for Astra Militarum now. There is obviously Tau. I've got Battlesuit commanders, which are quite nice kits, and you can customize them, modify them. And it's a mech suit as well, which is always cool. And then you've got Space Marines. Have got loads of different commanders you can choose from. There's a multi-part Sisters of Battle one. The Autarch kit for Aldar. Yeah, Necron Lords are pretty. Yeah, it's quite a few actually. Yeah, you're right. There's compared to other factions, Tyranids have got Hive Tyrants, and you can build them as Swarm Lords. You can build them as Winged Hive Tyrants. All those different biomorphs that you can change and swap out. They're pretty limited. The old Necron Lord is. Are these new guys going to get the Raptor head decal, or will you stick with the scores? These are going to get some Raptor heads on there. I've managed to source some decals from somewhere, and they are hopefully going to be on their way fairly soon. So yeah, I'm going to be adding those rather than the skulls, because I was able to get a hold of some this time. Hopefully enough for an army. Are you using the same painting method as your kill team video? No, it's going to be different. I'll quickly bring in the original one so you can see there's quite a strong difference already. Obviously, once things get toned down and painted and things like that, the tone will change, but that's more of like a washed out green. This is more of a vibrant green. Mainly because I wanted something a little bit brighter, because I think that always looks a little bit better when you've got a full army, and you can go a little bit heavy with the weathering without making the models look too dull and washed out and things like that. So yeah, not quite the same, but similar. This technique is quite similar from the previous one as well. Is there anyone who can help me join the Discord? Tried the last time, but it didn't work. Try the link. If you type in !Discord is like one of the chat commands, that should show up, I think. Shadowcroc. One project I'm working on is I paint my dreadnoughts as different marine types. For example, the Brutalis' dreadnought is a tech marine, and I have a Blade Guard dreadnought. It involves a lot of kit bashing, but helps make the dreadnoughts into their own characters. That's a nice idea actually, because they're all these like fighters which have been taken to like the brink of death and have been deemed worthy to continue the fight. So yeah, then there are going to be people who, they're not just going to be like the regular rank and file marine who's gets killed very quickly when it's not really done all that much, but they're going to be people who are a little bit more established. Things like you say, tech marines, Blade Guard, definitely, yeah. The more veteran of the units. So what I was going to do originally was going to paint these with that grey and then do some silver colorations on it, but I've decided against that. I think I might actually go with the green here again, just to cut down on that painting time. So we're just going to go over these and make sure that it's got some chipping on there as well. Kind of makes it more of a unit with the power pack. If I had more time, I'd maybe paint them yellow. I think yellow is quite a good colour for Raptors. A lot of people use yellow for helmets, and it will give us a nice idea. But yeah, maybe not. It's one of those conundrums when you come to paint an army, because you want to do something fairly speedy. You don't want to spend too much time on any one step, so you want to make sure that everything you're doing is effective, it's going to be worthwhile, and it's going to look good, but isn't going to take forever to do it when you've got to actually apply that technique across an entire army. So yeah, I'm just following my own advice here and just doing as much as I can over these gauntlets, because they are probably going to be where most of this damage is going to be occurring. So yeah, the more we can do here. They're also quite large areas on the front of the model, so they work quite well for those kind of things. I can't wait for the Votan Kill Team box to come out on its own. I have a great idea to turn them to Skaven. Yeah, they work really nice as like a Skaven kill team. But yeah, this is what I mean about they release a new kill team, and it's like, oh wow, new kill team. You've got to buy the box, which comes with the scenery that you already have. And really, the only different thing in there with a lot of the kill teams that have been released, especially like the Votan one, is there's just one extra sprue in there. And it's kind of like a bit of a kick in the teeth that you've got to buy a whole box set with 2 kill teams in there, load of scenery, especially if you just bought the last kill team box that came out like a few weeks ago, because that seemed to, at one point, there's like a kill team box coming out every few months. Well, every month, actually, I think it got to the point of all the Gallo Dark stuff was coming out very thick and fast. I feel like this has descended into Games Workshop criticism stream. This is when I get an email from them tomorrow saying that we're cutting ties with you, Pete. You've not got the positive attitude that we were looking for in content creators. Okay, let's do a little bit more here. Let's bring out those edges. There's a little bit more chipping to do with a different colour. So for areas that aren't very heavily chipped, we can do more. Just rinse that brush out and just check that everything else is okay. Quite happy with that. Let me just get this so I can see a live feed. There we go. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. Happy with that so far. Yeah, plenty of chipping on that one. A little bit less on this particular model. Yeah, let's maybe do a little bit more on this hand here. Maybe a few of the fingers. And then a little bit over there. I don't know if you can hear the dogs on the stream over the microphone. They basically go for a walk in the morning, sleep all day. After they have their dinner, they just kind of go on a little mental, it's kind of a mad half hour as we call it, and just go crazy and start playing. And one of them is very loud, as you can hear. And then when they're done that, they'll just go back to being asleep, and that's it then for the rest of the day. They'll have a pre-sleep before they have their main sleep at night. Yeah, so just bringing out these tanks as well. I did forget to come back to these on the other models, so luckily I remembered. Let's use the sponge on that one. Get the zoomers. Basically, yeah, I think they kind of get a little bit of food in them. They get their energy back, and then they just crash then. And one of them's still technically a puppy, so she kind of encourages the old one a little bit. I think I've got one more of those tanks to do. That one's done. Let's do this one. You see this paint starts to dry a little bit as well. You actually have to apply a little bit more force, which is quite good because it stops the paint from just accumulating in one giant lump. It actually makes it have those jagged edges and more scratched effect. So as well, because there are areas where I haven't obviously done any scratches on, like the pouches, things like that. Those it is making the armor look a little bit more. It's making it look less damage than it actually is because you're comparing it against these areas. Once these have been painted black, obviously you won't have that same effect. So you kind of got to think ahead about what something's going to look like later. It might look a little bit sparse in some places, but then that will start to fill in later on once we add more detail elsewhere. Okay, I think we're done for that one. I think we're done for the. I'm quite happy with the chipping that we've got there. It didn't take too long considering. Just a little bit less than an hour. Probably a little bit faster if I didn't keep stopping and chatting to everyone, and I didn't actually start it straight away. So yeah, not bad, not bad. Let's have a look at the chat whilst I take a break from this one. Eerie's now. Eerie Snow? Or Eerie's now? I've noticed that cats get the zoomies after using the litter box. Yeah, my cat. So I've got two cats. We've got an outdoor cat. We've got an indoor cat. And the indoor cat never likes to go outside. But then when it's warm weather, he likes to kind of just like wander out onto the patio. But then he kind of often, if he goes a little bit too far, he kind of scares himself and decides to go back in the house. And we've got another cat which basically just lives outside constantly when it's nice weather and just comes in the evening. But those are older. Yankee, show us your dogs. I will show them on the next two streams because I'm just going to be, wife's on holiday next week, so she kind of makes sure they're not up to mischief whilst I'm on these streams. But next week I'm going to be on my own, so I'm going to have to probably bring them in on the stream just to keep an eye on them. How often do you use oil washes? I'm using them for the Krieg I'm painting at the moment, and they're amazing. They are really good, yeah. I think any of the kind of the enamel washes are pretty good as well. But yeah, they do make a big difference. I think for these, even oil washes might work quite well. Lots of recesses on Space Marine armor that you can really get into the basis. Yankee, I'll remind you about the dogs on a daily basis. Take it as a threat. Yeah, we'll I'll definitely bring the dogs in. I'll probably have to like pause the stream halfway through to take them to the toilet because one of them just always needs a toilet all the time. Just has a seriously weak bladder. Right, next paint. We're going to do a little bit of mixing. We're going to take some of the golden olive. Make sure that's in the frame. Golden olive. That's what I used for the final airbrush highlight. I'm going to take a little bit of that. Probably a little bit too much than we need for this. And then we're going to take a little bit of pastel yellow. So the good thing about pastel yellow in these colours is because you can see it's more of a yellowish green. So you have like bluish greens and yellowish greens. This is more of a yellowish green. So by adding like a lighter yellow colour like this into it, you start to keep the similar. I always get mixed up on the terminologies here, but I think you keep the similar kind of hue, but you start to lighten that mix a little bit. Whereas if you just put in a white, that's wrong paint, put in a white, you start to find it does lighten it, but it also starts to desaturate things. So you start to lose that green colour. So using a little bit of a yellow paint. Oh, look, this is the same thing. Look at that. using a yellow paint helped to kind of counteract that. Carrick, would you say Cult of Paint is the best place to go for airbrush tutorials? Yeah, I would. I often use Cult of Paint. Let's just get some of that out manually. I haven't used this particular paint for a while, so that's probably why. Yeah, Cult of Paint, I myself will watch their videos for stuff. I mean, if you watch a few of my videos, I've even said I'll base this around Cult of Paints. Where's an older brush to do this mixing? I'll even base a few of my tutorials roughly around what they are, modified based on the paints that I have access to and things like that. Okay, so we're just going to be lightening this up a little bit. Not too much, we want to keep that green. And because I airbrush as well, when you airbrush, it's never, unless you do like a really solid airbrush, it's never going to be quite the same. So this should be considerably lighter than any of the paints that we've got on the surface. And we're basically going to do the same as what we did last time. We're going to be doing a little bit of edge highlighting, same as last time, and also a little bit of sponging. So yeah, it's a very straightforward kind of method. Let's take a little bit of that. We're going to stipple that out, and hopefully this will be lighter. Let's try on an area down here. So you can see already it's quite a difference in green. And what this will do is this will also mimic scratches, but whereas the red is more of like deep scratches where the paint has been actually scraped away, this lighter green is actually going to be more of a lighter surface scratch. So it's as if it's made an indentation in the paintwork, but it's not gone all the way through. And that's what this will do, gives that effect. And you can also combine them with the details. So it also gives that slightly more mottled effect to the surface, you can see there. What I like about painting Raptors is you can kind of paint them as if you're painting a tank. Especially Space Marines, obviously, it works exceptionally well because they are just basically walking tanks, which is one of the things which I mentioned. If you joined me on the stream when I was talking about putting pouches on Aggressors, and when you first think of it, it's kind of a dumb idea because look at the pouches as compared to the hands, and they've basically got power fists, so anything that they touch will just get obliterated. But if you think of them as being human-shaped tanks as opposed to being their actual kind of combat equipment, then tanks have stowage on the outside. It's not used in battle, but it's used by the crew when they're doing repairs, they're doing general maintenance, extra fuels carried on the outside, extra weapons carried on the outside, things as simple as, I don't know, just kind of like bed rolls, things like that, stuff that they don't need in combat, but they want to take with them. And they want to make sure that they've got enough space on the inside of the tank. So they stick stuff on the outside. They're not going to use it in battle, but it's going to be there for when they need it afterwards. And the same principle goes for these guys. As soon as these guys get out of the armor, maybe between battles, or maybe if they're behind enemy lines for quite a long time, they can kind of just slip their hands out of the power fists and use the equipment in there to maybe not restock, but like do maintenance on the armor. Various other equipments that they might need. So we've done the sponging technique, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to do a similar kind of technique with the edges. I'm going to be a little neater with some of these edge highlights, just because I do want to treat this as a regular edge highlight as well as these scratches. But when we get a scratch, it's kind of like in the middle. So this is a good one here. Now I forget the exact specialist artist phrasing for this, but it's basically making a 3D effect on a surface. So if we add a scratch of a little bit more water in there, if we had a very small amount of this lighter paint just beneath this red scratch like that, it kind of gives a slightly three-dimensional effect, because it's as if you imagine that the red area is kind of been pushed in, and then this is formed a small kind of ridge, a small edge there, and obviously that's catching the light, so it would be lighter. So it kind of tricks your brain into thinking that there's some depth here. If you do it all the way around, it looks weird, but if you just do it on that bottom edge where you'd expect light to be coming down from above and catching it, it adds a little bit of extra detail to the surfaces. Again, you don't need to do that for all the scratches, but just a few of them helps to give it more of a give the armor more of a depth to it, rather than just being a flat surface been painted with scratches and damage and details. So the highlights as well, I'm keeping fairly isolated to certain areas. Sometimes I'll highlight most things, but if you can see, I'm kind of looking for areas where, again, that light's coming from above. So a lot of these kind of shoulder pads are going to be quite heavily highlighted, but I'm keeping some of those scratches and damage still visible. And the great thing about Raptors is you don't actually need to paint these trims any different colour, you just paint them the same colour. You just highlight them instead. It's great, much easier. Raptors are a very easy army to paint because you can get away with not painting details because you just remove most of them. I don't have to paint the chest eagle on there. I've got no fancy purity seals or any bits of parchment or fancy bits of detail to paint. I just literally paint the armor, paint the equipment all one colour. Easy peasy. Starting to add a little bit more detail to the armor now. We're starting to get a little bit more defined. We'll probably start doing some washes next, starting to bring out those details, darken down some of these surfaces a little bit. And then that will, again, add to that layer of depth in the model. Right, anyway, I think I've neglected the chat for a little bit, so let's have a quick drink and speak to some of you lovely people. Right, how are we going? How are we going? How are we going? How are we going? Let's get back to where we were. Right. Leon VZ88, I really enjoy watching your YouTube channel tutorials, watching from South Africa. Hello from South Africa. That's the best South African accent I can do. My only kind of experience to South African accent is District 9 and prawns. Zoinked One, also from South Africa. Hello, we've got quite. I think you're in a similar time zone to us, aren't you, South Africa? It's. I know it's not too far, considering quite a way away. We're obviously in the same kind of time zone. 6 p.m. here. Got a Studio Metro card somewhere. How else will they get into the bus or train? Exactly. It can be difficult to find people to play you, even get new models. Yeah, that's the trouble with some areas. I'm very spoilt in the UK. It's very easy to get stuff. I'm literally less than an hour and a half from Warhammer World, so we can pretty much get everything from Forge World there. How long will this be until? So this particular stream is running for the next, well, just a little bit less than 2 hours. I'll probably be painting, though, for the whole of that time, and then continuing the painting going forward. $8 p.m. British time, yeah, thank you. Isn't it Trump do Ola or something to that effect? It's French. It's definitely French. It's definitely French. I can't remember. Chipping like this kind of scares me, since I either get too dry or too wet paint on it. So the good thing, I'll quickly demonstrate something, and it's only something I really picked up fairly recently. Was that what you want really? So a lot of people will say, if you're doing really fine details, what you need is a brush. If I've got one handy. What you need for your fine details is you need something like this, like a really small. This is a 00. You need like a 000 or even fine. That's what you need for doing your sharp details. And I agree, but the thing about this kind of brush, it doesn't hold much paint, so you kind of have to get your paint consistency a lot more correct, and then you have to keep going back to your palette to reapply it. I use those more for doing like scripture and really small details. This is a size 3, so this is what, 4 sizes bigger than the other one. 0, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 4 sizes bigger than the other one. It's got a pretty nice point of a brush there. You can see the points really quite thin. But what I can do is I can load up paint into this tip of this brush here, because the bristles are nice and thick, so I can actually water the paint down a little bit more than I maybe would do normally. And then as I'm applying the paint, it's feeding down to that tip. So this is why it's important to, I mean, getting good, more expensive brushes isn't always going to be a game changer. It's not like, oh, well, if you're painting with cheap brushes, you're going to get the same effect as you're painting. You're going to get a much better effect as soon as you switch to more expensive brushes. It's not that case. It's more of a case that you can do more with them, but you still have to learn how to use them. And that's kind of the case with these. These are Artis Opus ones as well. So yeah. I live about a 15-minute drive from Warhammer World. It's great. Yeah, it's quite nice living quite close. I don't live too far from Element Games, as they're like so either. So it's quite useful to go up there. They have all the Games Workshop stuff pretty much, even some of the direct to order stuff, and they have like other game systems. So it's very, very easy to just grab anything that I need. Despite Games Workshop operating a store in my country, they've refused to register with the toll authority, so I have to pay extra toll if I want Forge World. That's annoying. International shipping. We're very spoiled here in the UK for Games Workshop. Trump Leol. Finally, that art GCSE coming in handy. Are you playing any vehicles for your Raptors? Yeah, so this is what I was thinking about earlier, actually. And maybe you guys can offer a little bit of advice if you kind of that way knowledgeable in terms of how rules and things like that work. So I really like the Horus Heresy era tanks. Really big fan of like the Predators and stuff like that. And whilst I think the Primus tanks are so very perfect for Raptors, I quite like the idea of taking one of those old style Predators, obviously running it as a regular Predator, and just kind of going, because the reason why I want to use one of those old ones is because they're actually fairly sparse on surface details. There's not too much on there, which means I can go to ham on things like stowage and extra equipment, and I can swap out the drivers, well, the tank commander for like a Primus one or something like that. But then I'm not sure what kind of how Predators are looking in the new edition, and whether or not it's viable really to run those kind of vehicles alongside what would predominantly be a Primus force. But yeah, anyone who's a bit more clued up in the rules might be able to offer some advice in that regards. So yeah, again, just focusing mainly on these upper edges. It's not going to be the best paintwork that I've ever done, but it doesn't matter, because whenever you do these kind of paintworks across a larger scale, it kind of helps everything blends in anyway. If you do like a masterclass level paintwork on every single one of your models, you will lose a lot of that detail, especially if you're planning on using it for games, things like that. So a few extra like scratches on the surface here, just where the chipping didn't quite make it. I'm actually surprised I'm keeping everything in focus today. I have a habit of just kind of going off here, but what I've done is, you can't see it, but I've made like a square of tape. If I just angle this, you can just about see my square of tape. That's basically where my dead zone is. So if I'm over here, then I know that I'm not, because I'm over my square of tape. So it's the outer limits for the painting. Again, I'm trying not to do too much highlighting here. Just a few key areas, especially towards the front of the model, where you're going to see these details more. I don't want to spend too much time on this step, but I quite like doing highlights, so it's very difficult to kind of come away from doing this, because I actually really like the effect that highlights have on the model. Right, let's leave it there on this model. We'll come back. We can always add more if we need to. Right. The nearest Games Workshop store to me is over a mountain. I assume that like you live in a town that's the other side of a mountain, as opposed to you just living away from the town that has the games, which I'm just living on the other side of a mountain. Fab Alien, I saw a guy making an excellent conversion of a Rogel Dawn into a Raptor Predator. It's a nice idea, actually, yeah, because you can probably dip in a lot to those Imperial Guard kits and really go tactical with them. The one thing which I'd always be tempted to, but I'm not sure if it'd be a little bit over top, a little bit too much, would be to do like reactive armor. I think it would work really well for the effect, but I don't know if it would just be a little bit too, I don't know, maybe too real world. I'm in Snowdonia Mountain Range. Yeah, up in the hills of Snowdonia. Which Games Workshop store is that? Because I mean, I used to go when I was a kid. I used to go on my holidays. Used to be around that area, a little bit further north towards the coast. But yeah, I used to go around. Used to stay in Anglesey a lot. Used to go to Bangor and places like that. Or I've heard it. Is it Bangor, as in, or Bangor? It's spelt more like Bangor, but I don't know if it's pronounced Bangor or Bangor more. But there was a shop there which sold Warhammer, and I'm talking maybe about nearly 20 years ago now. It wasn't official Games Workshop, but it was just kind of one of those game shops that sold games and Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards and things like that. What was it called? Was it maybe Summit Games, something like that? I think it was called. But yeah, I used to get stuff from there. Basically save up my birthday money, and then we went on holiday. And then, yeah, buy Warhammer with it. I think one of the things I remember getting was this is a long time ago now, so it would have been they used to do like, there were £50 and there was army kind of starter sets, and they did one for the Empire when they used to have Warhammer Fantasy. And it came with knights, militia, and then a cannon, maybe something else actually. I can't remember, but yeah, I definitely remember getting some of those. I used to get Lord of the Rings stuff from there as well, because I started off getting with the Lord of the Rings battle game. That's how I started, and then I moved into 40k, Age of Sigmar. Well, not Age of Sigmar at the time. 40k and Warhammer Fantasy at the time. But yeah, Summit Games I think it was. There was a guy on the Raptor subreddit with a gladiator covered in ERA. It was a bit busy but looked good. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I don't want things looking too busy. But I want it to look. It's got enough going on, but not over the top. And it's hard to get that balance sometimes. There's probably like a perfect ratio of details to like plain unused armor, I think, for Raptors. Let's pick that up as well. There we go. Brings out that edge a little bit nicely. Yeah, again, just trying to focus mainly on these front details towards the top as well. Not even doing every single edge. Bangor, okay. That's the one. Yeah, we used to stay in a place called, what was it now? So we used to dip into Colwyn Bay. That was somewhere we used to go, Ross-on-Sea. These are childhood holiday destinations for Pete the Wargamer now. Also ended up in Anglesey a lot. I think it was, what was the name? I can't remember the exact name of the town that we used to stay in now, but I do remember the beach being called Red Wharf Bay, which is pretty funny because I was quite a big fan of Red Dwarf as well. So always that's obviously stuck in my mind. yeah, I can very much remember many of those holidays just spent waiting until we could go to the Warhammer shop and I could buy Warhammer. I used to take paints and stuff on holiday with me as well to paint whilst I was there. I was a very active child, as you can imagine. That's a lie. So yeah, going back to my early method. So this is actually quite a watery mix, and it's made the tip really, really fine. So I can actually get quite a lot of paint out of it without having to keep going back to my palette, which just it does help. So yeah, sometimes using the smallest detail brush on those smallest details isn't always the best option. You know what? Let's actually add a little bit of highlights to these because I think I'm going to overpaint these face plates anyway, but just so I don't have to come back and apply more paint later on and mix it up, let's just pick some of those out before I forget. Okay. So yeah, it's a lot more detail heavy from the top here as compared to if you look at it from underneath. It's not as detail heavy, but that's fine because most of these models you're going to be looking at more from this kind of angle on a tabletop. And this is the difference with painting for display versus painting for gaming, because if you're painting for display, chances are people are going to be maybe able to see more around the model. They can see more of the angles. If it's in a display cabinet, it might be more eye level, so some of these details might get lost. But if you're painting for gaming, you can get some really interesting effects just by picking and choosing exactly where you apply your time and focus. And then you're also using brighter colours as well tends to work quite well for armies. I've seen some fantastically painted miniatures used in armies, but when they've been, and they're really kind of like subtle shading and details, but then when they're on a tabletop and you're not always going to be in like pristine studio light, they lose a lot of that detail. They look very flat, don't look quite as good on the tabletop, but look amazing in person. So yeah, it's all about finding that balance really when it comes to doing these kind of things. Okay, this one done yet? Let's just pick out that little bit there, just to help to bring out some of those details. Still in focus. I'm doing good today. I think I am. Every time I look at the camera, I'm at the camera's output, I'm always in focus, or at least vaguely in focus, or on screen. So yeah, it's good. We're doing good today. Perfect. Okay, let's do the final one. But before we do, let's check to see some of the comments. Holyhead. Yes, Holyhead. It was Holyhead that we used to go to. That's it. Yeah, that's where we used to go quite often. Wait till he does. Came for the mini, stayed for the voice work. Yeah, wait till he does lore section. Yeah, if you weren't here on the Wednesday feed, I ended up becoming a lore channel temporarily, where I just read from the wikis for various different chapters and regiments. Komodo TV, how will you paint the skull part of the helmet? Will you make it lighter bone colour? I wish they sold Reaver helmets separate. They look awesome, and all the bits resellers never have them in stock. Yeah, it's because they're really cool helmets. I mean, there are plenty of other third-party companies which offer similar style helmets, similar kind of skull-sized helmets. But if you want to use Games Workshop only parts, it can be quite difficult. I've for these kind of forces, I thought aggressors, 3 in a unit. They're not particularly rank and file, they're more elite, so I'm not going to have many in an army, so I can get away with using Reaver heads. Buying a few extra Reaver heads isn't too difficult. But yeah, if I was going about maybe heavy intercessors, I wouldn't have used the Reaver heads. I think they work quite nicely to give that elite look. But yeah, cool. Viewers, 65 viewers. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in on this Sunday evening. Well, Sunday evening if you're in this particular time zone, but if you're anywhere else in the world, that's if you're in the US, you're probably looking at, what is it now? Depending on where you are, it's probably around between lunchtime through to the morning. Mixed Waters, thank you. Welcome to the chat. Hello. We're painting Raptors. So this is the last one. This is going to be the Sergeant. So I kept the kind of the bear head there just to give him... I don't think it really matters in the new rules for 10th edition anyway. There isn't really like a dedicated Sergeant model a lot of time in the rules. And really before, most of the time, the only difference was that they had different weapons or had an extra attack. But even that doesn't seem to be the case with these guys. 10:25 on the West Coast, watching paint dry on a Sunday morning. Yeah, that's exactly what the stream is. Just watching paint dry. And then when I do the kit bashing stream, it's watching glue dry. Yeah, so it's a little bit earlier than I would be running. So normally I'd kind of like to catch as many people worldwide as I can, and doing it later tends to be better. I get a few of the people over in the US. A few of those people can jump on stream because it's kind of in the middle of the day, especially on a Sunday. And obviously in the UK, people, it's kind of the evening, and anyone who's a little bit further east from here, it's still not super late, so then maybe they can tune in later on in the evening. The thing I did forget to do with this one is to go ahead with the sponging. 6:26 p.m. in Ireland, yeah, same time as it is here. Right. Yeah, the only trouble I'm getting at the moment is this fan. It's kind of drying out some of the paint, so I'm having to... Even the wet palette can't fight it, so I'm going to have to mix up a little bit more of that paint. Do you have any finished Raptors for a quick comparison? I do have finished Raptors, yeah, but I'm doing a different color scheme. So this is the old scheme. Process is going to be very similar. Like I said earlier, the weaponry, details, things like that, they're all going to be the same, but I've just changed the green color a little bit, just made it a bit brighter this time around. Should also remind everyone that I do actually, if you prefer to watch these videos on YouTube, I do have a Pete the Wargamer VODs channel set up now, and I do upload the videos afterwards. You can watch them on Twitch, but if you prefer to watch them on YouTube, I've just set up a separate channel just to keep everything separate from the main channel. It doesn't clog up the feed for everyone who's not really interested in the live streams, because they are obviously not as punchy and not straightforward. They're a bit more long form, a bit more rambly. Alright, just a little mix up a little bit more of the golden olive and pastel yellow there. Gives us enough to continue sponging. Thanks, Yankee, for dropping that link in there as well. Yeah, just a little extra channel really just to keep everything separate. And I think I've heard differing things when it comes to YouTube and how the algorithm works. You're always going to find differing opinions, because no one really knows, apart from the people who actually work at YouTube, how the algorithm works, and it always changes as soon as someone does seem to figure it out. But the general consensus is, and I'd rather err on the side of caution with it anyway, is that uploading VODs to your regular channel can affect the way that YouTube sees your content, because they might normally look at a video, say if you release a 20-minute video and people watch 10 minutes of it, then that's 50% retainment. People have continued watching that video for at least 50% of the time. But if they were to tune in to a 3-hour live stream on your channel and only watch 10 minutes of it, well, then that's a much, much smaller fraction of that. And so they'll kind of look, wow, these videos mustn't be very popular. The channel mustn't be very popular. And so they can kind of punish you that way. Like I said, I don't know if that's exactly how it works. It's just what I've seemed to have gleaned from being on YouTube for quite a while and seeing other people's videos and chatting to other people about it and seeing people's experiments. So yeah, it's just easy to keep it separate channel, and everyone can live on there. Okay. So I think when I was building this kit, the Sergeant has a different torso, if I remember rightly. It's kind of a little bit more ornate. It's got a little bit more of that detailing kind of in the loin area. But obviously it's no good for me on this model. I decided to get rid of all those and replace them with pouches. So yeah, it's quite difficult to differentiate the unit leader, even though it's not as necessary rules-wise as I believe in 10th edition, because there isn't really any different rules for them. But still, it's nice just to keep everything uniform. Okay, let's jump into the... Yes, do not forget to join the Discord server. Do not forget. Mixed Forces, your Cornate Russ is amazing. Thank you very much. Do appreciate that. If you're a fan of demonic Primarchs that shouldn't be demonic Primarchs, I might have something else you'd be interested in coming in a few weeks' time. So yeah, keep them peeled for that. Projects I've been planning for a while. I've just kind of got to a point in my backlog of projects that I want to do where it's kind of fitting nicely to that. A couple more minutes before an ad starts, so it should be enough time to get most of these highlights finished then. And then once that's done, we can move on to the probably washing the armor, probably giving it a little bit more shading in the recesses, just helping to counterpoint these highlights that I'm doing here, bring out some of those details a little bit further. Should start licking my brushes. It's a great thing about painting Space Marines like this is you can use a lot of these different effects on the armor, because it's the most prominent detail. You can kind of go for the more damaged armor, you can go for inscribed armor, lots of different things. It makes it easy for kit bashing as well, but painting, again, it gives you a whole different kind of surface you can work with and modify quite easily. For models like Imperial Guard, you can damage the armor and that using these kind of same techniques. But because a lot of them are far less armored, you can't go as heavy on it. So ad is starting in 30 seconds. Hopefully by the time the ad has come and gone, we will mostly be done with these highlights. And yeah, I need to probably just check exactly which highlight, because I think I might just do the same wash technique that I did on my old Raptors, but I can't remember exactly what the technique was, so I might have to quickly go back to one of the videos and just double check. This is the good thing about making videos, is you can actually go back and check. Which I've actually done on more than one occasion, where I've started an army and couldn't remember how I'd painted it, so I've gone back like, how have I painted this before? And just gone back to the video that I've done about it, and I can be like, oh, okay, that's how I did it. Thanks, Past Pete, for making a note of it. I mean, I could just make a note in like a notebook or something. I don't really need to go to the effort of making an entire video just to keep a track of how my army schemes are, but it's quite useful to see how I approach things and what techniques to do, and it's not just written down, it's a bit more of a visual thing you can learn from again. Not too far off with these, just a few more little bits and bobs, especially around that's the one around the head as well. Always come back and do more if I feel that once the washes are in place, it's kind of looking a little bit too flat. Then we can always pick out a few more of these edges with the highlights afterwards. It's not as, once you're done, you're done. You can come back and modify things as necessary. No reason to be strict about it. Okay, we're back from the ads. Very nearly done with this one. I'm just going to pick out a couple more of these little scratches on the gauntlet there. And then I'm actually going to fire up my old Raptors video, because I can't remember exactly which shading I used for it. So let's have a look at that. Also get some extra views on my my Raptors videos as well. Okay. Right. Let's put that to one side. Put my mic over here. Let's go on to face. Hopefully it goes into focus, yeah. And I'll try and get a little bit closer to the microphone, because I like to change my armors. Firefox. Cool. Right, let's go on to how to paint Raptors YouTube. Which one's mine? There it is. I need to modify this one a bit. Accept all. Watch an ad. Duracell. Yeah, as I was saying in the ad break, I have a tendency of forgetting how I paint stuff. So having these videos is quite good to go back to and just figure out exactly what it is that how I painted something in the past. And having it written down is usually pretty good, but having something you can kind of just go back and see the actual technique is also useful as well. Right, okay, so where were we here? This is decals, armor. So what I think I might have done is so that's the airbrushing. Okay, so what I did before is I basically did the decals before I did any of the weathering, which would have been more sensible, but I don't have the decals. So maybe I'll do that for some of the other models. Okay, yeah, so that was an airbrushing of a contrast paint. Crusted sauce, so that's what we've done. Combat fatigues, edge highlights, done that. Okay, so now it's equipment, necromancer cloak, pastel yellow. I'm sure I went over them. Did I go over them? Did I miss it? I'm sure I went over the wash. Gorgon to fur. Okay, this is it. So I basically applied that. It was a very quick one into the recesses, and that was basically my edge highlights. I don't know if I did any more later on. No. Okay. It's kind of funny you have to watch an ad for your own video. Yeah, it's because I'm on Firefox, and I kind of just use this for the streaming just because it's easier. But I do have YouTube Premium, so I don't watch any ads for my own videos or anyone else's videos for that, because I just have ad premium. Yeah. Okay, so Gorgon to fur. Let's go back to face. Okay. Do have. So I think Gorgon to fur was chosen, if I remember rightly, because it has a slightly reddish hue to it, which means that you can. There we go, Gorgon to fur. So I'll switch back to tabletop and face. It's quite dark, but it has that reddish hue, which is going to contrast nicely against the green and tie in to that surface damage that we've applied. So yeah, what I might do is, I'm not going to use the airbrush for this. I'm going to use it with a brush. And it's going to need to be thinned, really. I want to use it more as a panel liner. What can we do? So airbrush thinner. You can actually use it for regular paint on a palette as well. You don't have to use it on an airbrush. You can use it to thin out your regular paint. So obviously contrast paint is contrast paint. It's not a wash, which means that if you want to use it as a wash, you need to thin it out. Otherwise, it's a little bit too strong. And that might be fine in certain areas, but for a lot of the areas, I want it to be a little bit more pooling in those surfaces. And because I've airbrushed and I've used the AK paints, they're quite matte. And the thing is about using contrast paints on very matte surfaces, it has a tendency to stain the surfaces. So it's quite handy to do a targeted wash for these kind of things, because you don't want to accidentally get into those recesses, which is why probably airbrushing is good. Make sure the contrast paint's nice and shaken. Should be okay. Cool. So drop a little bit of this onto the palette. I'm basically going to make a wash using the thinner. Just a little bit though, not too much. That should do it. I'll try on the model with that. And then, rather than an all-over wash, I'm just going to be applying this as like a panel liner. What I mean by panel liner is, obviously this Space Marine armor's got lots of panels and lots of hard edges, but also these very kind of defined recesses. So what you can do is you can apply the paints directly into those, as opposed to just applying it over everything. And it should, especially for these little small details, you can see how it just kind of floods into those. Let's bring it up to the camera a little bit more so I can make sure it's doing it. So you can see it kind of gets pulled into those recesses. And because we thinned out the mixture, we can kind of remove it from the surface and it just goes straight into those recesses like that. So you can see the Gorgon to fur red coming out as well. Like I said, because I started off with like that red primer, so all the underneath is this kind of red colour. It helps to blend in to that original base colour, and because it's red, it contrasts nicely against the green. So yeah, I'm just going to take a similar kind of process to what I did with the highlights and just focus on certain edges rather than all over. Just try and bring a little bit of depth of detail to those kind of areas where you would expect someone to look more, which is going to be more on the top. But also there's the effect this brown has as well, as it gives that more dirty look too. So it's brown, looks like mud and dust has accumulated. Really moves everything away from that pristine look that a lot of the other chapters have. Now for areas that are a little bit more recessed, I don't need to be as precise because A, they're not as easy to see, and B, they're also going to be a little bit darker simply because they are more recessed. You can see straight away those details coming out a little bit more in the hand compared to that one. Like you can see a little slight flatness in these areas, but this one's getting a little bit more of a definition in those recesses. We can dark them off. Saint Decent, thank you very much for your subscription. Now, I am under the assumption, based on your name, Saint Decent, that you are Saint Decent of Instagram and sculpting fame. Big fan of your work. I just used Tamiya panel liner. Yeah, you can use panel liners. I think it depends what you're using, really, what kind of colours you're going for. But I make my own just because it's more convenient if I want to use it as over the surfaces as well, because I can just water it down a little bit less. Yeah, I thought I was correct with that assumption, Saint Decent. There's a few little names that pop up in these Twitch, and some people are like, "Oh, I'm such and such a person," because their name is nothing the same. But it's nice when people's names match up to their other accounts and profiles. That helps to identify everyone. I think actually, do I have? I think for a long time I actually had some of. Are they in here? No, I had some of the parts. Yeah, look, I actually have some of Saint Decent's heads in here. Look at that. This is for a project I was working on for. I was going to do some kind of night themed Stormcast, but I think I started the project halfway through another project and never got around to finish it. So I 3D printed all the parts off, but never actually went anywhere. I also sculpted a few little bits myself. I never sculpted before. I made these little kind of, you can just about see them, little fleur-de-lis on these little chests, and it was kind of a Bretonnian themed Stormcast, and I made my own little tilt shields as well. They were a little bit too big, so I kind of scaled them down to these little tiny ones. And then where else did we have? Made some little Grail ones. Yeah, so I never really done any sculpting before, so I thought, well, let's give it a go. And I kept it fairly simple. Oh, these are my favourite actually. These little fleur-de-lis ones, which are quite nice. I mean, I didn't sculpt that. I just got like a free resource file from somewhere on the internet and just kind of added it to my own little shields that I made. But the shields were made themselves. The little box I made myself. I was quite pleased with those. A long way to go to actually be a decent sculptor though, so we'll see. I use the Tamiya Dark Grey as I work with greys and dark greys most of the time, and it works pretty well, though I do need to get the black panel liner. I think I used the panel liner a while, or maybe one of the other companies' panel liners. They are really good, but I think, like I said, they're limited a little bit in terms of the colours that they offer, and if you want to do things other than blacks and greys, I think a lot of the panel liners are designed for aircraft, if I'm not mistaken, because they have like lots of these very, very intricate panels and things like that, which is very difficult to get into those with like regular brushes. So having like a really easily flowing kind of paint to get into those and bring out those panels is ideal, and you wouldn't really need much else. You wouldn't need to like have a blue panel liner or anything like that, or a bright pink one, but you might need it for a Space Marine or other Warhammer miniature. Average Irish Dude, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm glad to hear you like my videos. Danky Yankee or Yankee. It's not, I think I know it's not Danky Yankee, but it's Danka Yankee. But it just makes me always think of Danky Yankee, so it kind of just slips out. Anyway, I'm also trying to sculpt stuff, but each time I either throw a tantrum or get a mental breakdown. It is tricky. I think one of the things that I found was difficult is I'd figure out. I think I grasp a technique and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do it this way. And then when I actually try to do it a different way than the way I'd followed it in the tutorial, it just didn't work, which was disheartening at times. And then other times you do something and then it would work and you'd be inspired to do more, and then you tried to 3D print it and it failed, it didn't work, and you're like, oh, great. But then when I finally did 3D print stuff and it was actually coming out, it was really nice kind of feeling when you actually got an actual product that you sculpted yourself, like a physical product. But I mean, the stuff that people sculpt is crazy. So yeah, I should note, sorry, that you may notice I'm not being particularly neat with these, and the kind of the beauty with using this thinner is that it kind of does slow down the drying time a little bit. So if you can take a little bit more thinner and spread out some of these surfaces, and it helps to get those blends if you need them. But yeah, it all adds to that grimy, dirty effect. So it's not imperative that we become incredibly neat with these applications. Just keep it nice and straightforward. Nice and simple. So if I bring this one that hasn't been washed, you can see the difference between the two, and kind of what a difference it makes in those kind of recesses, and helps to add to the griminess. There's probably a few areas I can still add it to. But yeah, that really helps to bring out those details as well. And again, I'm not worrying about being too precise or neat as I maybe was with this guy. I'm going for a different result here, so I'm not too worried if it's not going to look as good. Hopefully have more of them, which is the main. I think for my whole of my kill team, I did 5 originally, then I did another one which had the heavy assassin and the scout, then the medic and the was the medic and the zealot or something. So that was 9, and then I did the chaplain on his own, so it's 10. I think I did 10 models for that entire kill team. So yeah. Right, where were we? Also, Pete, trying to say my name in German is pure gold. Insert JoJo Part 2 stripe. When I started with sculpting, still terrible, I just learned to embrace how bad I was, and it became a lot more fun, not helpful. But yeah, I think it's one of those. I think it's like anything. It's the same with kit bashing. The advice I would give to people who learn to kit bash: you are going to make mistakes. You are going to make things which look ridiculous, but every now and again you'll stick a part on something which you didn't immediately think would look good, and it actually turns out quite good, and you realize, oh, this actually works really nice for this kind of effect, and then you learn from that. I'm sure that sculpting probably has a similar learning curve. And also I think with sculpting and doing 3D sculpting, it's not necessarily just by having that vision of something you can do and making sure you can look at something like a picture or if it's like a real world object and recreate that in 3D. It's also knowing how to use the tools, and when you come to 3D printing, you've got to do things like making sure that it prints properly and the supports are correct, and it's just a whole thing that you don't really have with this physical. And with this, you can kind of go, okay, well, that's this size, you can move it around, and yeah. I might need to go back to it eventually. Have you ever converted a mortifactor, and if so, how many skulls is too many? I mean, there's never too many skulls. The only thing is you might run into the problem of making them look like a slightly cleaner looking corn berserker. So yeah, essentially just Raven Guard with a different bird. Yeah, I mean that's the Raptors are basically they're a Raven Guard subchapter, and they are more utilitarian in their approach. So they have that kind of more militaristic look than maybe Raven Guard do, but they're also a lot more kind of, is pragmatic the word? Yeah. Baz Watkins, hey there, Pete. Forgive me if you've answered this generic question already. But what's the next model you're itching to do? Well, I don't want to give too much away by what it is, because it's literally the next project I'm going to be working on after I finished. Where are they? There. So this is basically what I'm working on for next week's video. I'm working on 5 of these, which is why it's taking so long. So there's like a whole. These are the Stern Guard from Leviathan. So I've made them into Fallen, but like redeemed versions of them. So that's why it's taking me so long, because I'm painting 5 models rather than just the usual one. So once that project's finished, I've got one which is gearing up for the next project, which is going to be. I don't want to give too much away. It's going to be a big one again. And if you're a fan of Dornian Heresy and Rebutian Heresy, those kind of things, you're going to be a fan of this one. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say. Right. Anyway, let's carry on with a few more of these washes. There's a few more in these areas that we can get. Again, don't want to spend too much time on these. Once we start to add details to other stuff, it will make these areas look a little bit more detailed than they are currently, because they won't be standing next to these really, like these areas here which have no detail in them. Pick a few more out up here, and then might just switch to the next one for the time being. Don't spend too much time on these really. I mean, my speed painting is 3 hours just to paint the armor of 3 models. That's speed painting for me. I know some people can probably paint a whole squad of aggressors in less time than that, from start to finish, and I even actually have mine primed to begin with. So, but at least with these, the way that I've kind of painted them is that is the most. It's the largest area in the model. Everything else is a lot smaller. So once this is done, the bulk of the model is actually completed. I don't need to worry too much about all these little intricate details and stuff. I'm just going to paint them all one color, and then highlight them to get a little bit of differentiation between the different areas. Is this an acrylic wash? This is a basically contrast thinned with airbrush thinner. It's kind of my own wash. Can we have a stream where you build some Necromunda bounty hunters? To be honest, actually, thinking about it now, I know you have requested Necromunda stuff quite a lot, Yankee. I actually reckon a stream would be a really good medium to do those in, because they're a lot more. Because Necromunda is a lot more freeform, you have a lot more options with things. I could even do something where people suggest on stream what I'm working on and what kits to use. That would be a lot more freedom, because Necromunda it's kind of anything goes. You can go a little bit more chaotic if you want. You can go really high tech. You can go really low tech. You can go things like corridor, so you can go very primitive, very religious-like, all sorts of things. So many things you can go for. I think the only thing with Necromunda is whilst I'm aware of all the gangs and what their kind of basic roles are in Necromunda, how they kind of fit into the story, I don't know much about how the rules work. I don't know how much about like a lot of the deep lore goes, because I mean they're very kind of heavy on lore. So that's what's probably put me off, because I'm usually spending my time keeping up with 40k lore and Age of Sigmar lore as well, just to kind of see what else there is out there that I could kit bash. But adding Necromunda into that mix just always seems daunting. So every now and then I do dip into it just to see what there is. And obviously I kind of had to brush up a little bit when I did those 3 models for the painting phase to get an idea of exactly how I could build some interesting miniatures. So I did like the what was it called now? Vansar Bureaucrat, because I just thought it was quite funny, because it said that, oh yeah, a lot of the Vansar are made up of people who handle weapon shipments and make sure that things are going out on time. I thought, well, they've basically got bureaucrats working there. Let's build on those. That'll be quite funny. Obviously, the butchers needed someone who was a big fan of eating all the food that they prepared. And the Vansar, no, not the Dalek one was probably the most straightforward. He was just like a kind of a hacker, which again worked quite nicely for their spycraft aspect. I've just been waffling on about Necromunda for probably about 5 minutes now. Yankee got me started. Totally instead of keeping things in the rats, I'm just working on a Heresy Lionel Johnson myself, and it's at the very early ugly stages. Yeah, we've all been there, where you kind of start working on something and it just looks terrible, and it starts to come together as you work on it more and you build it up. I can teach you about everything, don't worry about it. Yeah, you have to send me little snippets of daily snippets of interesting Necromunda lore on Discord. Kitbash by vote won't go horribly wrong, I promise. I mean, I'm going to kind of reserve I'll reserve last decision. If it's a good idea and it's practicable, then yeah, I will go for it. But if it's kind of, oh yeah, you've got to buy this obscure kit off eBay to get the parts now, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So we've done this arm. Let's do a little bit more on the shoulder pad first. Let's have a quick drink. Catch up on the chat because I've paused it by accident. Korn. Hey Pete, I'm a huge Korn fan, I guess by the name, and I'm collecting a World Eaters army. As you can guess by my suspiciously similar online name, my favourite character is Korn. Your tutorials were what I followed meticulously to paint mine 2 years ago, and it's the way I paint my World Eaters to say thank you. You're very much welcome. I quite enjoyed that model because it was a little bit of one of those models where we hadn't really seen much in the way for the World Eaters for a long time. I think at the time the only World Eaters we had were kind of newer than the old Khorne Berserkers, were stuff that had been released as part of the Horus Heresy. But yeah, at that time it was like one of the few World Eater models that were 40k Chaos versions, which was nice. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing that tutorial. It came out quite nicely as well. So I'm glad you found it useful. There's a lot of things in Necromunda that requires kit bashing to even exist. I think that's what I've heard. There's a lot of stuff which is why it's interesting when you see how nice and versatile the Necromunda kits are, because it's been designed with the idea of kit bashing, mixing parts from other stuff, and you've got even like a kit which is like the generic Necromunda hivers, which is just like really open to conversions and mixing and matching with other stuff. GBL Dude 11, hello, I love your content. It's amazing. Thank you very much. Do appreciate it. It's making my ego grow on this stream. First time chat, Mori Bori 99. I get I get that with my Solar Watch Custodians. They look awful until the recess stage shade. Yes, they do. Lots of things do. A lot of people give up halfway through, and if you just kind of take a little bit more time to work on it and give it a chance to get to the end, you'll find that it looks a lot better when you add those final few details. Maybe some of the common combos of Roll Gang that don't have any model. Yeah, nice idea. Lord of Right Zero, beat the Wargamer. Just a quick question. How long does it take for Milliput to dry? Off the top of my head, I don't know. I tend to leave, so if I do some Milliput work, before I do any more work to it, once I'm happy with how it's looking, before I add anything on top of it, or paint it or anything, I usually leave it overnight. So we're talking at least 8 hours, something like that. I wouldn't leave it any less than that personally, but maybe it does dry pretty quickly. Yeah, it's cool to actually be able to collect them these days. Yeah, definitely. It's nice to see a lot more of those miniatures. I really hope that we see Noise Marines and some other Emperor's Children, 40k Emperor's Children stuff get released, because if you look at it, I think I was talking about this, might have been in the Discord a while ago actually. We had Death Guard released in 8th edition Star Set. We got new 8th edition Death Guard when 8th was on the roll. 9th edition came out, of 40k that is, and we saw World Eaters, and we had... When did Thousand Suns come out? Did Thousand Suns come out in 7th edition? Was that before Death Guard? I think it was actually, yeah. I think they came out before the Death Guard, which came out. So yeah, so 7th edition had Thousand Suns, 8th edition had Death Guard, 9th edition had World Eaters, which means that we should see in 10th edition, we should see Emperor's Children. Fingers crossed. One of my favourite parts of the Necromunda lore is where an Ogren was fed so many magic mushrooms that he turned into a Psyker. That's just crazy. It's one of those crazy backgrounds where it's very dense, it's very hard to get into, but once you kind of start peeling back those layers, you actually start to see some really interesting and fun stuff. There's literally a whole murder circus noble house. Nice. I've been painting for 2 months and converted all my Citadel paints into dropper bottles. I've never actually done that. That's probably because I don't use Citadel paints very often. I use contrast paints, and the only reason I haven't transferred those into dropper bottles is because I actually find it useful sometimes just to dip into the pot. Excuse me. Gonna go back to water. I shouldn't really be drinking caffeine this late in the day, but oh well. Right, okay. So the problem I'm getting is this fan is just drying out my wet palette. Just add a little bit more of that airbrush thinner to it. Get that thinned down a bit more. Okay. Probably need to wet my palette a little bit more than normal just to get it. Are we in frame? Yeah, we are. Cool. Yeah, it's the good thing about these kind of really thin washes is they just pull into all those recesses really quickly, really easily. If you use, I want to do this, enhance this effect even further, you can use like a gloss varnish before you do anything. And that will really force those washes into the recesses as opposed to being on the surfaces. But again, we're trying to save time here, so the more steps we can kind of shave off and get around, the faster this will be, which actually makes it a viable painting scheme for an army. In terms, because these aggressors are slightly less numerous than any of the other units you're going to field in your army, intercessors or anything like that, you can get away with painting with a little bit more, spending a little bit more time. They're obviously bigger as well, which kind of takes into, so you've got to take into account that you are painting more of a model, and there's more of these extra like details around the arm and things like that, so you do have to spend a little bit more time on there to get the same effect. But if you're painting an army, you do need to make those sacrifices where you can. unless you want to spend an eternity painting it, and then there's like a new edition or the new rules come out and you realise that the army that you've painted is no longer viable. So I'm not sure where to go after these though. I might just go for some regular battle line intercessors. I do like heavy intercessors. I do like Gravis armor, Space Marines, but I'm not sure if that's what I want to go for. I don't want the army looking too heavy. I want that kind of nice mix of Maximus armor, I think it's called, Phobos armor, and Gravis as well. I don't want to lean too heavily into one type of armor if I can. Let's play a little bit more around this. With this glove being raised, I want to darken these areas down a little bit more, because I haven't gone as heavy with the green overspray. So yeah, I want to darken these down a little bit more just to make them look a bit more shaded, and focus on those recesses as well. So there's a few areas here where I've got these tide marks, which again isn't particularly desirable if you're doing an army which is meant to be pristine. But I mean, if you're doing something which is a little bit battle worn, a little bit more rough and ready than maybe other chapters are, then you can get away with it. And later on I can always add more dirt and as like extra weathering, and that helps to tone those effects down as well. So this is actually quite a forgiving scheme for trying to paint quickly. You don't need to be too fancy, like too particular about the highlights. You don't need to be too particular about the washes. It's just about getting those colours down. So again, let's compare this to the unwashed one. You can see there's a big difference between the two. Like I said, what I might do is once some of these extra details have been filled in, if I feel like these areas are looking a bit too flat, I'll just go over with a highlight, and you can highlight over the washes as well. It's not a problem. That's look quite good. Okay, let's rinse that brush out. What are your top tips on painting for noobs? Well, the one that no one wants to hear is just practice makes perfect. The more you practice, the better you will get anyway. Always make sure one of the first tips to master really is how to thin down your paints and how to get your paints the right consistency, because as soon as you can kind of figure out how to mix up base coats, how much water and how much paint you need to make like a base coat consistency versus how much paint and water you need to make highlight, then that's like all fundamental stuff that's important to know. But yeah, so practice and get used to thinning down your paints and how they work when they're thinned down, and just go from there. That's the main thing. The more you paint, the better you'll get. Then once you're comfortable with doing base coats, washes, you can move on to highlights. You can then move on to things like glazes and blending future down the line. Don't worry about trying to go to those things straight away. Just focus on getting those basic core techniques down. Arachon Bravestorm. What's your go-to for metallics? It varies. I mean, I've used the Tooth and Coats range of paints as quite a lot for metallics. These have been painted with Tooth and Coats range, so it's basically Surcoat Silver and then a wash and then Mithril Blade as an edge highlight. Pretty much all those. So yeah, they're quite nice metallics. Very similar to Games Workshop metallics in that regards. When I painted the Keldor Drago, I used some of Vallejo's metal color paints, which are really nice. They have like an amazing metal effect, but they tend to work better as through an airbrush. The formulated 4 airbrush you can apply with a regular brush, but I find that they're better with airbrushes. They're very, thin, basically. Artsy Gem, I am a bad fan. I didn't even know you streamed on Twitch. Yeah, it's still fairly recent. This is only the second Sunday. Is it the second Sunday I've streamed now? Yeah, second Sunday. It's the fourth stream that I've done, so don't worry. Don't worry, it's still early days, so yeah. But yeah, if you join the Discord channel like Yankee suggested, there is I kind of messed around with some of the bots and stuff like that, so you can jump in there and set like a role announcement. So you can assign yourself a role to get announcements for new Twitch streams and videos and things like that. But yeah. Tech Priest M4R5. Have you tried Vince Venturalla's gold recipe? It's changed my life. I haven't actually. Maybe I should try it. Maybe I should give it a go. I haven't actually tried it myself. On a similar vein, painting advice for the easily distracted. I've got a dozen or so flesh tearers that are in a variety of stages of completion. So, there's a thing about... There's a fine line. So what you need to do is, a lot of people say if you're painting an army, batch paint them. And that's good advice. Batch painting an army is really good advice because it means, like how I'm doing here, I'm painting 3 models. I'm just mixing up one lot of paint at a time. It helps to keep a consistency across the models. And then once you've done one model, you've pretty much completed 3 models or a whole squad. What a lot of people do then is they think, well, if batch painting is good, better than painting one model at a time, then the more I batch paint must be better. And it's not. It actually kind of works less, because I made the mistake of doing that when I painted the whole contents of the Ages of Darkness box set, where I basically painted everything in a batch. I did all the white, I did all the blue, all the metallic, all the blood effects, everything in one go, and it got very, very boring very quickly. What I should have done is broken down into maybe 10-man squads, do a 10-man squad, 10-man squad, 10-man squad, do that 4 times, do 2 5-man cataphractes, do the dreadnought, do the Land Raider, do the captains, all on their own things. Yeah, and I've seen people who've literally tried to build and batch paint a whole army, and they've just given up halfway through because they got bored, because you need to have those completed models to keep you going, to keep you motivated. So if you've got a lot of stuff which is unpainted, obviously getting that initial motivation to paint it is hard, but once you start doing a few, you'll get that idea. But if you've already got a lot of stuff which is unpainted, then yeah, keep on painting, but try to limit how much you're painting in one go. Don't just paint single miniatures, but maybe paint, if you're struggling with 10, drop it down to 5. Struggling with 5, drop it down to 3. It's better than nothing. Vallejo metal color gold, copper, and green stuff world gold pigment. Yes, I need to try the copper one. I haven't tried the copper one. The gold is very, very light, so I think mixing with a bit of copper would help. I've not used Green Stuff World gold pigments. As I mentioned in my last stream, Green Stuff World are a little bit of a iffy company, in my opinion. They have a tendency of taking other people's ideas, patented. Oh, I can't do the word. Copywriting the idea, basically, when other people haven't, and then being very litigious towards other people when they try to sell their own. I think one of the good examples is the tube maker. But yeah. Leaf painting. Crunch for time, but found you on Twitch. Yeah. Hello, welcome. You found me. You dropped me a follow now, so hopefully you'll get notifications when I'm streaming. Streaming normally will be 7 p.m. Wednesdays and Sundays. Normally for 2 hours on a Wednesday, but I'm just kind of trying to do a little bit more at the moment. Just 3 hours on a Wednesday, 3 hours on a Sunday, but it'll be go back to 2 and 3. But yeah, I'll be streaming for 7 p.m. Wednesdays and Sundays, BST, so that's British Summer Time. Just a little bit early today. Aracon Bravestorm. When I was painting my God Combat Patrol, I went with the Sentinel first, then went to a 10-man infantry, then the command squad, then an artillery, then the second 10-man infantry, then the last artillery, and I was super happy with it. Yeah, I think it's a good way because you're breaking it up. You're not just doing 10 men and then another 10 men. You're doing 10 men, then a vehicle or a squad, and you're kind of breaking things up. You're painting similar colours, but you're painting different steps, and you've got different results at the end of it, which is quite nice. Found it work on Instagram a while ago. Well, yeah, thank you very much. I have not a bad following on Instagram. I need to post more on Instagram, but I often forget, so I'm surprised I got any following whatsoever there. Random Necrorunner facts: you can buy booze and get drunk mid-game. Great. It's a bonus I can see your process and say hi sometimes. Yeah, it is good. This is a good thing about doing these streams. There's a whole different kind of process that goes into painting, which you don't always get across in videos, because you have to edit them down to make them digestible for people. So it's quite nice to having these streams, and you can chat as well, which is always good. Offer advice a little bit more immediately than maybe the comment sections on YouTube does, because it's very hard to keep track of comments, especially from videos which are a little older as well. Although every now and again it's quite funny when you see a comment just kind of pop up and someone's commented on a video from like 6 years ago. It's like, I know it's an old video, but can you answer me this question? And then you just see it like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll just quickly answer it. And you kind of forget that video even existed that you did 6 years ago. Crownblade, first time chat, hello. Good luck with your 40k game, I reckon. I don't know if you're playing new 10th edition rules. Do need to get some games in there. Kabuski, welcome to the stream. I will always say, whenever Kabuski joins me on stream, go check them out on Instagram, Twitter. Are you anywhere else? Same name. But yeah, amazing. I've got a lot of inspirations and stuff like that. I've got my Solar Auxiliary in my, I don't think you can see it on there. Oh, you can just about see the cabinet, but yeah, it's my Solar Auxiliary based on your Digibashes in there. Pride of place. What am I working on today? So basically these Raptors. So these are, I start off with just the base colours. I've been doing a lot of weathering, chipping and washes in this video. What are we on? We can probably finish the washes on this guy. That'd be a nice way to round off the stream today. So yeah, not too much, just kind of trying to keep the details there, but whilst also trying to be as quick as possible. So I do apologise if I keep repeating what I'm doing, but there obviously are some people who drop in the stream after I've already explained it. It's not like a regular video. Some people drop in and out. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm just making a kind of a very thin wash of Gorgrunter fur by mixing it with some airbrush thinner, and I'm just kind of using this as a panel liner just to kind of get into those recesses. These are intended to be for an army as well, so I'm not worrying too much about getting everything perfect, getting everything neat and catching every recess with the wash and catching every hard edge with a highlight. Just about getting as much detail as I can in a reasonably short time. Appreciate the shouts, though. In recent times, I've been in a hobby idea drought. I mean, I get that. I get the same kind of thing. The problem I get sometimes is that I feel that for a time, all my ideas end up being very similar. And then I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but in slightly different ways. which is why sometimes I like to do a slightly different projects than maybe I would normally tackle. So the Tau Auxilia that I did, the Screv Aok, that was kind of like almost like a palette cleanser because I'd just been doing a lot of Space Marine conversions and Horus Heresy stuff, and I was like, well, what can I do which is very different from any of these and isn't just based on like an existing chapter or regiment or anything like that. I can just go free reign on it, so I don't have to follow any existing army, established army lore or faction lore or anything like that. These guys can be anything I want them. They can look any way that I want, as long as I kind of tie them back into the Tau somehow. And yeah, it's quite nice. It was quite nice to do something very different. And then after that, I kind of got a little bit more of like I suppose it's almost like a writer's block, but not for writers. I think that works with a lot of things. Anything that's kind of creative, if you kind of find yourself struggling, the worst thing you can do is just sit there banging your head against a wall. You've got to almost change what it is you're doing, just to give you just a different perspective on a situation. That can help wonders. When I used to do software development as a job, I would sometimes spend all day working on a problem and just not getting anywhere with it, and couldn't really think how to proceed or get around a certain issue or whatever. And then the next day when I'm getting ready to go to work, I suddenly just have the idea and I get into work and I fixed it or resolved it in like 5 minutes of getting into work, because I'd taken my mind out of that situation. So when I came back to it, I kind of had a fresh perspective. Doesn't always work, of course, but anyway, I'm waffling. Thought I was losing it. I kept finding more and more trim edges to highlight. It's true with paint, with highlighting. Photo bashing Tyranids is really hard. I mean, converting Tyranids is really hard because most of the stuff that you have to do with Tyranids involves some sort of sculpting just to get everything blending together. So yeah, I can appreciate that photo bashing Tyranids is difficult. Quite like the mushroomy boys that you did. I like them, yeah. They were good, they were. I might do more of those kind of Tau Auxilia in the future. Just to kind of explore different Tau races. There was actually some art in... It's in the new... Leviathan rulebook as well, but it kind of first appeared in the 9th edition rulebook, and it's that one where it's just got loads of random Xenos races in there. And it'd be pretty cool to maybe tackle some of those as full-on miniatures, because there is a lot of Xenos races in the 41st Millennium. Even like the Horus Heresy series, there's a few different races that they kind of come across. There's like the spider one in Horus Rising. And in one of the... Is it the Angron book? I think it's Angron. There's like a human faction of kind of pilot like drone people, versions of people, and they kind of just live in vats somewhere, if I'm remembering correctly. There's loads of really cool factions that aren't just the big main ones that you see in the actual tabletop. So as I said, if I'm making these overspills and mistakes, it's fine, because this is a brown. It's a brown wash. It just looks like mud and dirt's accumulated. So again, it's not a problem if we're not 100% neat. We want to be as neat as possible, but if we do overspill, it's not a big deal. Look at drink. Are you going to do the Leviathan Lieutenant as a Raptor? I feel it would fit in well. Yeah, it would work actually really nicely. The Phobos armor works well. I'm not sure about the Tyranid stuff on him though. Maybe I have to modify that. Not sure really. Here's an idea for it. Customize some Leviathan Marines to have Tyranid Chitin. I always got that wrong. I used to call it Chitin. Chitin, like the lieutenants, are basically making Tyranid war vets. That is one idea I had. But I decided to go with a different direction with my Stern Guard. But yeah, they would have been a good option. The Ultramarine stuff is very good for that kind of thing. You could use some Tyranid war veterans for Ultramarines. Blade Guard would work really well, thinking about it. Have you ever considered branching out into other model lines like Gundam, scale models, or other games? I have done that kind of on and off the channel for over the years, but I've always kind of come back to 40k, partly because I enjoy it the most, and also partly because it's what gets the most kind of engagement with people. Most people prefer to watch 40k stuff than scale modeling stuff, at least my stuff, because my scale modeling stuff wasn't anywhere near on par with like someone like Night Shift or something like that. So yeah. Gundam, no, I've never really looked at it, but maybe would possibly do like a kit bash. There are a few nice kits that I've seen that would work quite well with kit bashing with 40k stuff, so maybe. Kanesin, I'm a systems engineer. I feel you on that. I dream of solutions sometimes and wake up in the middle of the night like Azar. Yeah, I know that exact feeling. It's a strange thing where you just be like in the shower or something like that, and you just kind of get an idea to some sort of like, oh, how can I do this formula? How can I build this? How can I approach this problem? What can I do? And like it just comes to you when you're not thinking about it. I get that I did a Nomad's Necromunda Warband to clear my head, and as a bonus I get to use them both as is and as counts as crew for my army. Yeah, nice idea. It's just a good idea to kind of get out of your comfort zone. If you're looking to improve as well, if you're looking to try out new techniques, it's very safe to keep doing the same things. But when you try something else and you have to use new techniques, you have to use new miniatures, maybe approach it different ways, it's a good way of improving your skills, but also kind of giving you a different aspect to work on as well. I don't know, but I cannot paint unless it's sub-assembly. I can do both. I think with these guys, again, sub-assemblies can be a double-edged sword when you're trying to speed things up. Sometimes they make it easier and you can get to areas more easily. You don't have to fight against the model, but other times you can end up painting parts that you don't need to paint. I've done that loads. I've been painting parts and I've been like, I've put a lot of detail into this and it's actually not going to be visible now that I've glued it together and I've wasted time. And also it can be quite difficult to see where shadows can be. So I try to keep it for... So like with Kaldor Drago, I sub-assembled the shield and the head just to make it easy to paint the body. But yeah, they've got their time. They've got their place. They're always necessary. I've always been interested by the Thrud. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people suggest that I do those in the future. If you create a new Chaos Guard, what would it represent and look like? That's an interesting question. So the tricky thing is you have the kind of the main 4 Chaos Gods cover a lot of what is there already. So anything that you can think of could fall into any of those 4. Because even if you try to think of something which is quite obscure, you can see how it fits in to one of the other ones. So like, for example, Nurgle is both entropy and also kind of growth. So it works both ways. It's that cycle of life of things waning and dying off. So anything which is like death related is kind of related to that. And then anything Slaanesh incorporates a lot of different things, a lot beyond what people just immediately think about. I mean, there's also the whole kind of thing about pride. There's also anything to excess. I mean, one thing that you don't see very often with Slaanesh, you saw it a little bit more with Age of Sigmar, but not as much with 40k, is that you've got some of the artwork which depicts people who literally just keep on eating to excess, which obviously is the same kind of aspect. But then you've also got the more nobler aspects of each of the Chaos Gods as well. So I think Khorne's got one which is no, Khorne, is Khorne Pride? I can't remember. I think Khorne might be Pride, not Slaanesh. So it's when people. So you could have someone who's like a very kind of proud, honourable warrior, and they could still actually be feeding into Khorne, even though they're not bloodthirsty and collecting skulls for their enemies. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I would do for a Chaos God. I think the stuff with Vashtor was quite nice. It was like a technical, like a techie kind of Chaos God who wanted to ascend and almost be his own Chaos God. I don't know. I'll get back to have a think. I'll get back to you on that one. It's a good question. Good question. The inevitability of doing wargame content, Warhammer stuff, it's always does better. Yeah, just a lot more of a larger audience. I really want to do Gundam piloted by Grots, like a few exposed arms welding and splicing wires. In fact, that'd be pretty cool. I'd like to see that. Doing a Grot Tanks guide would be a banger video. People love those, and there's tons of potential for bitches. I did actually have a go at doing one there was like these plastic tank kits for actual mini versions of World War II tanks. I did actually have a go, but it just didn't work out very good, so I didn't take it anywhere. So maybe there's an option to revisit that in the future. Inside of tanks, my failing, no one will ever see it, but my niggles my brain. Yeah, that's the trouble with those kind of things. There's sometimes details that you shouldn't do, but people always want to. Dion Wolf saying, first time chat, welcome to the chat. Chaos God of Expansion, focus on hoarding the amount of things one has. I guess, like, again, this is one of those things I was saying, it comes under greed, and Slaanesh's greed. It's gluttony, but it's also greed. It could be the accumulation of wealth, could be that. The old Malal Chaos God was kind of a god of nihilism, fighting against the other gods and everyone else, Just steal any god from an Asian religion, and there you go with a new Chaos God. I mean, you've got, oh no, it's not Ganesh. Ganesh is the elephant god, if I remember rightly. There's the one that has all the, I might be getting confused, one with all the arms. That'd be pretty cool basis for conversion. I believe both Khorne and Slaanesh have aspects of pride that they benefit from. Yeah, so I think they also overlap. There's like Venn diagrams of stuff. But yeah, Malal's probably the good one because he is just nihilism. It's not really any particular thing. It's just kind of almost in a way destruction for the sake of destruction. I guess maybe you could have like a god of apathy, where it's neither or. But then I feel like that again isn't really a god. It's just the middle ground between all of them. Interesting. Yeah. It's quite a tricky one to do because there are so many different things you can pull from. Does madness fall into any of the chaos gods? Yeah, probably Tzeentch. I would say that one. Tzeentch is probably the closest because I mean, yeah. But my initial thought was like, oh, you could like lean into some Lovecraftian stuff, but then Tzeentch kind of has that nailed down in terms of things that can make you go mad from just seeing them, or hearing the name of a demon can make you go mad, and being able to see 5 seconds into your own future all the time is very Tzeentchy. It's an excellent question, actually. I'm kind of stumped. I feel this is one of those exact situations that we were talking about where sometimes you need something which just pulls you out of your comfort zone a little bit to get thinking of things in a different way. And even if someone was to say to me, okay, well, how about making up your own Chaos God? How would you make the models? Even if I never actually kind of settle on an idea, because it made me think about the different aspects of chaos and how they tie in with each other and how they affect the world around them. You could maybe approach Slaanesh in a different way. You could do a model, like I said, like a greedy Slaanesh character whose main role is to accumulate wealth and precious, like almost like a collector, I guess, and like maybe like is it Trazen the Infinite? who's just obsessed with collecting as much stuff as they could, because it's like it's a greedy obsession that they have to collect stuff. Okay, so I think we're actually kind of coming up to a nice natural breakpoint in the stream, actually, because how far are we in? We've got 20 minutes left. 20 minutes left in the stream. I've mostly done this wash on this guy, so I can just kind of go back and maybe pick out a few more highlights that maybe I missed before. But yeah, I think what we'll do is once we finish this, we won't go any further with the painting than this. We'll just kind of go back and tidy up a few of the bits from the previous steps, maybe. But yeah, if Yankee, if you're still in the chat, do you want to run a poll for what we can do in the next stream? Probably either painting. I tell you what, painting, or we can do a necromunda conversion. That'll be the options. Actually, I did say I was going to do the conversion clinic. That's a thought. Put that as 3 options if you're still on the stream, and then we'll decide. I did promise everyone I'd do the conversion clinic, but I quite like the idea of painting these or doing some more. Doing some necromunda conversions, that'd be quite nice. Rinse my brush. Pause up. Thank you very much for doing that. Right, let's go back. Ergen Shark. I would like a Chaos God of order or control. That's quite a nice idea. It's like yeah, that's quite nice actually. Like order to the point where everything is lifeless and basically slavery, which would in return cause rebellion and change, aka chaos. Yeah, I think it's almost like it could be the opposite of chaos. Obviously, order is the opposite of chaos, but if order is taken to the extreme, it's kind of like it almost becomes the same kind of. I mean, chaos is a strange thing because chaos isn't always necessarily chaotic. If you think of a lot of the factions, a lot of the stuff, especially like Zinch does, he might come across as being chaotic, his actions, but long term, everything's planned out, everything's meticulously laid out to get to order to the point of lifelessness is that domain of Nagash and Age of Sigmar. Yeah, I mean, you don't really have that to the degree in 40k. In Age of Sigmar, obviously, you have death and you have destruction, which are their own separate entities outside of chaos, but you don't really have that in 40k. You have, obviously, Imperials, you have chaos, and then you have the Xenos races, which have their own kind of thing. But I guess Necrons are almost that. I suppose they're the kind of closest to that order, but then they're their own thing as well. It'd be interesting to see, maybe take some of those design elements from Age of Sigmar, maybe have a faction which is just a, because I suppose Nurgle is entropy, which is the natural desire of energy to kind of level out and become uniform, but then obviously he also has that aspect where stuff regrows, but maybe if it wasn't just necessarily a natural degradation of stuff over time, it was a forced destruction of anything and everything. Yeah, lots of options, lots of food for thought there. Right, what won the poll? Necromunda conversion. I do think that Yankee just went out and went out and made 4 accounts then, 3 extra accounts, and just voted for all of them. Okay, yeah, we'll do an Necromunda conversion for the next stream. We'll branch out a little bit, and then maybe come back to painting these guys next weekend. Probably going to keep this as like probably like a fairly long-term project, just building these on stream. There was no bribing involved. I didn't mention bribing. I mean, you the one. I just said that you made 3 extra accounts. I didn't even bring up any of the bribery. There's also a fun theory that the Empire of Mankind is the 5th Chaos God. Yeah, I've heard about that as well. And there's that whole kind of thing where if the Emperor was actually allowed to die and the Golden Throne was basically switched off, he would ascend as that 5th Chaos God. Interesting. It's one of those strange situations because if you'd gone back to someone maybe 15, 20 years ago, and said, and kind of asked them if they thought the Primarchs would ever come back to 40k and have miniatures and stuff, a lot of people probably think no, they wouldn't come back. Even 10 years ago. And then all of a sudden we've got 2 Chaos Primarchs, 3 Chaos Primarchs now, sorry, forgot about Angron. 3 Chaos Primarchs and 2 Loyalist Primarchs now, and we didn't have any 10 years ago. So to think that maybe in another 10 years we might actually see the Emperor, the kind of the storyline move on and the Emperor ascend, that might be interesting. Yankee, I will send you a nice compilation of the whole game so you can get a feel of what you want to build. I think I have one of the Necromunda books. I can't remember which one it is. It was the one when the kind of the squats were released as a gang. That was the... Yeah, I can't remember what it's called now. But yeah. 4 Chaos Primarchs and Lion is the 4th. Someone did it. Someone had to mention it, didn't it? Someone had to say the Dark Angels are actually Chaos. Dark Angel players get so salty when people point out that they are traitors. The Laughing God, yeah, I mean, it's obviously you've got that aspect of Aldar as well, and that kind of, yeah, there's a lot of, because is it, what's the Incarn? Is it Incarna? That's a death god, isn't it? If I remember rightly, is that a death god of the Aldar? I'm a bit rusty on Aldar lore, to be honest. Most of my lore comes from doing conversions, so I don't do many Aldar conversions, and I don't know much about the Aldar lore, apart from little bits and bobs that I remember vaguely. Yeah, so I think it was a triumvirate. What are they called? Incarn. What is it? It's an avatar of something, isn't it? What is it now? God of Death, yeah. Thanks, Scram90, first time chat. Thank you for jumping in. Yeah, so that's quite... Yeah, so I suppose there's like, in a way, that fills that same kind of... That kind of same aspect that Nagash and the Death forces do in Age of Sigmar. That kind of fulfills it in 40k. Interesting. So let's look at these models anyway. Let's have a look at what we've got here. So what did we do in this stream? So we did 3 models. We did the chipping, we did the highlights, we did the washes. And to be honest, I think that's pretty much it. There's a little bit of a miss. I can probably do a few more washes along here whilst I'm talking. So yeah, that's pretty much the armor done. Like I said, started off with a red oxide primer. Over that, went over the top with some of AK Interactive's olive, and then a little bit more over their golden olive. Then it did the what's it called? Berserker red. Added some chipping on the edges. Mixed some pastel yellow into golden olive for a lighter green that I could use as more chipping and edge highlights, and then just some Gorgrunter fur as a wash. I think that's pretty much it. Now we probably should be okay for the armor. We might come back later on at the end of the process once we've got maybe some decals and things like that in place. But I think the next port of call for me after this would be to give everything a base coat, to give all these pouches and everything like that a base coat of like a very dark grey, something like Corvus Black, Vallejo's Black Grey. Toothing Coats is Dark Reaper, I think it is. Something like that, Death Reaper, not Dark Reaper. And pretty much tackle everything. So all these pipes, all these gaps in the armor, the weapons, probably this part to the bars here. Maybe not this. The center part can stay green. And then I would highlight them in 2 stages. All the metallics would get a metallic edge, and then anything else, these pipes, for example, these gaps here, maybe these pipes, definitely the pouches, I would use a lighter grey to highlight those, and then move on to the tiny little bit of skin, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, there's not really many more steps left, which is surprising considering we've only painted the armor. Maybe, let's say 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 more steps for the extra details, and then the skin, and then I'm going to do something on the face. Maybe add a little bit more of a brighter color in there somewhere, like red lenses or something to stand out. Maybe yellow. I missed a lot of comments. What Primarch would you like to return next? Personally, I would like to see Dawn return, mainly because they kind of set him up for returning, because I think originally they was unable to find, no, they had his remains, or they'd accumulated parts of his remains, and it was basically parts of, I think the Imperial Fist still had parts of his corpse, so he was like definitely dead. And then they changed it so that they only had parts of his hand, and then his hand has actually been like scrimshawed and like etched into it. Now the bones are like form parts of relics. So the fact that they kind of retconned it so they only found his hand means that he could still be out there somewhere, which would be interesting. He could come back and have like an actual like iron fist for like the Imperial Fist aspect of him. That'd be pretty cool. I'm not super excited to see any Chaos Primarchs, to be honest. I think Fulgrim, we kind of know what he'd look like already. He's just going to be a big snake guy with multiple arms. Perturabo, big giant mech demon prince thing, probably go for that one. But yeah, I think the Loyalist ones would be interesting. I've really liked how the lion was depicted. He's very different than his original counterpart, and it's quite interesting how he kind of appeared. But maybe Russ would be cool. Yeah, lots of cool stuff. Souls beings trapped, and talking about Necron, souls beings trapped in robotic bodies that can't die seems pretty undead to me, not to mention they look like skeletons. Yeah, so the thing is about Necrons is Necrons are like undead in a like a really obvious on the nose way. And I quite like the idea of having almost an undead which isn't necessarily undead in that regard. It kind of maybe a chaos god that worships the chaos god, which the worship involves destruction and death, but then isn't necessarily undead, if that makes sense. Yeah, interesting. So the Terminators for where are we going? Summon the Varrock. Most probably it's Kharn that's next if they go hard with Dark Eldar. Russ would be awesome. Russ would be good. Force K Marath would be basically for Fulgrim. Yeah, it's quite straightforward. Kurax would be interesting because he kind of has that aspect of him where he's this kind of bird demon now that's flying around in the warp. So that'd be pretty cool. Because they could kind of go It'd be interesting if they had a like a two-part model, a little bit like Marathi, actually, funny enough, where it was he had two aspects. So he had one that was more of his kind of traditional, quote unquote, human-looking aspect, and one which was more of a one that kind of unleashed this almost like not chaos but demon version of himself. Don't care about Primarchs, just give me the Adamex Senator, who's so big in the lore that he has to be transported via cranes. That'd be pretty cool. Are you planning on doing Raptor Terminators with a new Leviathan box? Possibly, yeah. I'm probably not gonna use the Leviathan one, so I'm probably gonna wait till we see the multi-part kit, the inevitable multi-part kit that will be coming at some point, hopefully later this year. Just to give me more freedom to destroy parts and not worry that it's going to be hard to get replacements or anything like that. Where are we? Petrabo would be cool, I guess. Yeah, it would be. It'd be interesting. I think I'd rather see a loyal, mainly just to balance things out. Because we've got 3 Chaos Primarchs, so having 3 Loyalist Primarchs would be a nice balance between the two. I want the rest of the Chaos Primarchs. The lowest ones are rather dull. And Forge World already made them. They just get new haircuts, whereas the Chaos ones have a brand new look all over. So I would agree with that. I would agree that Gilliman and the Lion are quite similar to their original counterparts because they're basically like, oh well, they aren't really dead, but I think they could do something really nice with Korax. I reckon they could do something quite nice with Dawn as well, because, and probably the Khan as well. I think there's a lot of stuff where you can really kind of turn their original Horus Heresy equivalent on their head without necessarily going full on chaos, which seems like, I mean, a lot of the chaos ones are very obvious. I think that's why I'm not as interested in seeing them. It was kind of obvious what Angron would look like. He's basically based off his depictions from the Horus Heresy novels. Again, Mortarion and Magnus. I mean, Magnus is basically just his Horus Heresy version, but bigger with wings, a bit more bird features. So, yeah, I think they can go different aspects. Whether they will or not is a totally different kettle of fish, but yeah. Do you ever aim to play some tournaments with your chapter, or just love the hobby side, even if it's a chill tourney? Yeah, I would do. If I could build up to a decent sized force, I would definitely enter tournaments. Probably, I know Hellstorm Wargaming, Mikey from Hellstorm Wargaming, he's got a few. And another, he's got a tournament going, so maybe we call to enter that one. Yankee moderating going bye-bye. I sent you a 500-page long Necromunda PDF with literally all the rules. Feel free to ask me any questions for the next stream. Yeah, I just find the time to read 500 pages of rules and lore for Necromunda before Wednesday. SN is a great tourney as well. Yeah, I think I'll if I can build this army quick enough, maybe. That's the biggest thing. Maybe I'll have to stick to like Gravis just to increase the number of the chances of me actually building an army, reduce the number of miniatures in there. Right, so I think I'm going to leave that there for now. So yeah, last few minutes of the stream, I'm going to just see if there's anyone else who's currently streaming. Let's just go on to Face. Let's see if anyone else is currently streaming on Twitch, and maybe we can do a raid on anyone. Who is on here? It's Marco for Sony. Maybe we can go with Marco. Let's drop into Marco's stream. Who else is there? Yeah, let's go to Marco's stream. Okay, cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining this stream and joining me as I paint some of these little Raptor Aggressors. I enjoyed painting them. It was quite good just sitting down for 3 hours and just painting those, having a chat. Definitely be doing more of these painting streams in the future. Maybe do on next Sunday. I'll probably continue them, hopefully get a little bit further. But yeah, that's going to be it for this stream. I hope you all have a excellent Sunday, however much you have left of it, based on where in the world you are. Yeah, be sure to join me on Wednesday. It'll be normal time on Wednesday, 7 till 10. I'm going to be doing some Necromunda kit bashing, it seems. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. We will decide on the day. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. let's get this raid set up. Right, raid channel. Marco for Sony. Is he only just starting actually the stream? I think he's literally starting at 8, so we're going to raid him straight at the beginning of his stream. Yeah, let's wait till the stream starts. He's got 30 seconds to start, so we'll raid anyone who's still on the stream. We're gonna raid him in right at the beginning. 20 seconds left. If I start the raid, by the time it probably actually starts going, it will be running. So yeah, cool. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Big thanks to everyone who has subscribed, done some bits, threw some bits my way. Much appreciated. And I'll see you all on Wednesday. So we're going to start the raid. We jump on there. Keep it going for a little bit longer. Once that's done, we're going to end the stream there. Cool. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.